Yes, my sincerest apologies, everyone, for running a little bit late. Many of you will know that follow all the shows, and specifically the Miami show, that the reason I'm late is we had quite the extended discussion and debate and a fine conversation on Nick Saban and Miami football and other things that dragged on and on and on. And I kind of lost track of time. We usually wrap up there at 8 o'clock Eastern time and come right here. So did not realize that we were running about 25 minutes late. Welcome into the Voice of College Football on this momentous occasion. Wow. The term GOAT gets thrown around, but in this case, it is justified. It is confirmed. It is determined. I'm not saying that there is not an argument that Nick Saban is not the GOAT, but certainly he is number one on the list to be debated. 6 national championships at Alabama, 1 at LSU. He started at Michigan State in regards to his collegiate head coaching career. Cleveland Browns assistant coach and defensive coordinator. Just a remarkable career. We will dive into it. And of course, most of you looking forward, I like to focus on the legacy, the history, the accomplishments. But many of you, of course, now, who is going to be next in that seat in Tuscaloosa, and what are going to be the demands and expectations of that individual to keep up that legacy, to follow that legend? Wow, it is a daunting task, but somebody will believe to be up to the challenge as determined by the Alabama administration and everyone there in Tuscaloosa. So we appreciate you all stopping by. So again, we will discuss everything Nick Saban regarding his legacy and accomplishments and regarding who is next at Alabama. Please use the Amazon link when you do Amazon shopping. We have provided the link in the description section of all the videos, including this one. So please grab that link. It is the same shopping experience. Does not cost you a penny. Let's get right to the calls. We got Jeffrey on the line, front and center, got first in line. Jeffrey, good to see you.
I'm glad to be on, Mark. Somehow I was able to get on first. Usually there's always one or two ahead, but I appreciate that. But yeah, Nick Saban is the GOAT. I mean, I don't usually use that term very often. I usually, just say the best of all time. And I know it's what it means, greatest of all time, just acronym, but he is. I mean, what he's done in college football is unbelievable. Winning all those titles. I know that he had the talent. I get it. And everybody's talking about how with the NIL and the transfer portal, it kind of neutralized Alabama a bit because these other schools were able to kind of get on Alabama's level, like Georgia and Ohio State, which I'm not saying they never were because other programs were at Alabama's level, kind of, but it just seemed like the playing field got even more level. Saban was getting older too, and Alabama was slipping a bit, just a little bit. And it makes sense, I guess, why he's leaving now. I mean, a lot of coaches that have been so great in college basketball and college football are leaving right now because of how different it is than it used to be in recruiting and how everything's being done. And a lot of the older coaches probably aren't a fan of it. I mean, Jay Wright left college basketball for that reason alone at Villanova. I know no one cares about that here, but it's just like a perfect example. Just a lot of coaches don't like that. And I think Saban realizes that it's just going to get tougher from here, and that's why he's leaving while he still is basically at the top, even though I will say Kirby Smart kind of supplanted the last couple years and Harbaugh this year, but he still wanted to go out being not in Dabo Sweeney's situation right now where eventually Saban was going to start going 8-4.
Those are all great points. Of course, I've got to make things more complicated. I'm not the one just to say he's the GOAT. That's it. That's all there is to it, because for me, I tend to look at things like this.
Mm-hmm.
He has the most successful career in the history of college football, in my opinion. And I think that's easy to argue, and it would be difficult to argue against him being the most successful. So I'm going to separate most successful from being the greatest, because you have to be in a certain position to have that kind of success. I'm not saying that he's not the greatest coach, but I'm going to say that there are coaches that have been in other jobs for extended period of times and done other things with a lot less at their disposal. Let's say a Bill Snyder at Kansas State, that there's no way he's ever going to win at the Alabama Nick Saban level, but what he did was
Mhm.
remarkable. So I'm going to separate most successful, no question, to greatest of all time. If you talk about the greatest coach of all time, I think that's debatable. But
Mhm.
yeah, he is he is right up at the top of the list. I would place him at the top of the list. I will probably take this opportunity in the next few weeks to put together some kind of list of greatest coaches of all time, in my opinion.
There won't
Now,
be an Indiana coach on that list.
I don't believe, because we're not going to do basketball. So we're not going to have any Indiana coaches there unless we go extremely. If we go 400 long, maybe we get Bill Mallory in there and our
Yeah,
your
it'll
buddy
be one
Tom
of the
Allen.
only coaches with a losing record on the list at like 390.
That's right. So now we look forward to who's going to get this job and who's going to be determined to be the guy. And the first few names that come to mind for me: Lane Kiffin, Dan
Mhm.
Lanning's out there, Dabo Sweeney's an Alabama grad, Kirby Smart's one program over in the next state. My thoughts briefly about those guys would be Dabo Sweeney's an interesting one, because had this happened a couple of years ago
Mhm.
and he's on top, I don't know that he leaves, but maybe he's ready for a change and maybe he's ready to take this over. Kirby Smart, I don't know why he would leave Georgia. He's basically just taking over another Georgia, is what
Mhm.
he would be doing. And he has no ties to Alabama. He was a Georgia player.
Mhm.
Dabo Sweeney played at Alabama. Dan Lanning's the choice if they really want to go ultra young. Hey, this is going to be the next guy that's going to be here for 20 years. And he's energetic and he's already recruited the South and he's a defensive guy that is going to kind of fill that Saban legacy of defensive minded coaches like
Mhm.
Kirby Smart as well. But those are the guys that come to mind. I think Lane Kiffin's a far out choice. I don't think that.
Mhm.
I think even if he was considered, there would be just too many people in that room making that
Mhm.
decision, thinking, okay, no, we don't want Lane Kiffin at Alabama.
I've also seen Kalen DeBoer or Mike Norvell as kind of like out there
Yeah.
candidates, like Elaine Kiffin, kind of not the main few that people are thinking, but they're possibilities. I mean, I agree 100% with what you just said, like with Dabo Sweeney. Like a couple years ago, everybody's like Dabo to Alabama. Now, because he doesn't use the portal that much, if at all, and the fact that Clemson has not won as much the last couple years, and they have slipped a lot more than Alabama did the last couple. I think that there's more reservations on him now. Like, will he go to Alabama and be able to, I guess, adapt to the modern game? It's not that he hasn't, I guess, completely. It's just like offensively and defensively. There's not like scheme wise that it's bad, but just overall, like you have to be able, it's the cutting edge to be in the top. You have to do everything right to be a top 4 or 5 program. And if Alabama wants to stay in that group, is Dabo going to be the guy based on what he's doing right now? I don't know. But based on the other candidates, I mean, Kirby Smart, he leaving Georgia to go to Alabama when you got everything rolling at Georgia would just be insane. Like, I know Nick Saban left LSU for Alabama, and that was kind of lateral in a way. But still, like Alabama, I guess a lot more people would still think they're above LSU. But Georgia, man, like right now, there's no difference. Georgia's probably in better shape right now than Alabama, so it wouldn't make
Yeah.
sense at all.
Yeah. That
But
doesn't make sense to me unless he just
mhm,
wants to, hey, just beat his chest and show I can do it. I want to
mhm,
I just want to show off and show you that
mhm,
I can do it, and I can do it somewhere else, because that is another sign of a great coach in my mind when we're talking about the very, very
mhm,
top of the list. Dabo Sweeney, for as great as he's been,
mhm,
he's never shown that he can do it in multiple places.
mhm.
Nick Saban, multiple places. Urban Meyer, multiple places. There's something about a guy that can show, okay, this just wasn't the perfect situation for me. I
Mhm,
could go to another conference. I could go to another school and replicate it like that. That shows how good I am versus, again, a guy, Pete Carroll, for as great as he is. Now, of course, that's a different deal because he went to the NFL and won Super
mhm,
Bowl. So he showed that as well there. So, yeah, the Dabo point that you bring up is an interesting one, because I can see it from your side. I can also see it from the other side, that maybe it's time he will look at this as time to move on, that things have gotten a little stale here. I would like a jump start. I would like to take on that challenge, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
this would reinvigorate him. Not that he's gone stale or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that, but certainly the records would indicate that
Mm-hmm.
maybe he has. But yeah, he would have to adapt his thinking, because their transfer portal additions this year is still zero.
That's not going to get it done. I mean, look at Florida
No.
State. That's why they got really good in the last couple of years, because of the transfer portal, bringing in all those guys. I mean, Jordan Travis was a transfer from Louisville. You talk about Jaheim Bell. You talk about Jared
Yes.
Bird. All those guys were not Florida
Yes.
State players. They all were brought
Keon.
in.
Yep.
And Clemson did nothing in that regard. And that's why they're slipping a bit. But yeah, I think your point that you made about going to a new place and winning, shows the sign of a great coach. Because to me, it kind of thinks of like with Tom Brady as a player. I know no one wants to hear about NFL, but how he left and went from the Patriots to the Bucs and won the extra Super Bowl. And after that, Bill Belichick, it just went down the drain. Everybody went from, it was Bill Belichick that made Brady, to now, oh, Brady made Belichick. And that's why he's no good. And it was all Brady, and he could do it without him. I mean, the narrative shifted. So I agree. I mean, sometimes narratives, drive everything, even if they're right or wrong, just based off perceived perception. So, I mean, I think another interesting point is I made this statement on the Will Howard live stream you did and said that I wouldn't want to fill those shoes. This is even worse. Like you said, I mean, you're going to have to fill Nick Saban's shoes. 6 national titles at Alabama. Any of these coaching candidates, whoever takes the job, like the benchmark, you got to win 6 titles or more, no, you're not going to be able to do that, more than likely. I mean, even if you win 1 or 2 somehow, like that would be good, but you're following up 6 in Nick Saban. It's insane. And in the amount of success he had sustained in a row, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and that's what part of our debate was on the last show I was doing was, and we saw eye to eye to a certain extent, but Nick Saban, for as great as Alabama football has been forever, and I covered Alabama football in the early to mid to late 90s. So throughout the 90s, Gene Stallings into Mike Dubose. And so that was only 10 plus years removed from Bear Bryant. And so even at that stage, you're talking 7 less national championships, 6 less national championships. Alabama was revered as arguably the greatest program of all time then. But there was a lot of 9-3 seasons, 8-4 seasons, and then right before Saban, the 5 or 6 years before, there was a 3-9 season in there. So then when he was hired, they were 15 years away from their last national championship. They were 25 years away from consistently competing for national championships under Bear Bryant. So they were going to be happy with competing for SEC championships. And of course, so he's created this ridiculous standard in the modern era that the argument we were having was our guy on Cam Underwood on the Miami show was saying that Nick Saban basically was kind of getting, not that he was being pushed out, but there was a lot of talk that, the games passed you by and it's time and you're losing 2 games a year and you can't do that. And he created that. So the next guy's going to come in and what is going to be the standard? And for me, Jeffrey, I think that there is a shift now that we get to this 12-team playoff. And sure, people are going to care what your record is, and it's going to have to be pretty good to make the playoff, but it's not going to have to be undefeated or 1 loss to make the playoff. And so there's going to be a shift in evaluation of what's a successful coach at a place like Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. It's going to be more about, did you win in the playoffs? It's going to be assumed that you get to the playoffs. And so 10-2 seasons are going to be forgiven if you show up in the playoffs and you make a deep run or win a national championship. Forget 10-2. You're okay with going 10-2 if you make the playoffs and then you do something, as opposed to 12-0, 11-1. and you become the modern day Atlanta Braves or Buffalo Bills and you lose in the playoffs, even though
Mhm.
you have these outstanding, maybe number one teams. And so I just think there's going to be this NFL, NBA kind of shift toward March Madness. You know better than I do what the recency has been in college
Mhm.
basketball. Like I think and again, I don't follow college basketball anymore, but I know
Mhm.
Purdue has had outstanding regular seasons and they flame
Mhm.
out when everyone's watching in the NCAA tournament. I don't think it's going to
Mhm.
the perception's going to skew to that degree, but I think it's going to
Mhm.
go in that direction.
Yeah, that's funny you bring that up because everybody gets so upset when I say Purdue style of play does not work in the tournament. They keep losing. Like, you're only saying that because you like Indiana. And I'm like, hold on. I'm not biased here. It's just the facts. They don't do good in the tournament because of their style of play. That's funny. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I mean, in a way, that's kind of sad because it's not that you're condoning mediocrity because 10-2 is great, but it's like you're lessening the standards, though, for yourself. It's just with all these top programs. And I think that we've talked about like with NIL, is it going to level the playing field? I think it has somewhat, but it is creating a big gap though between the programs that are there and the programs that are not. Like, how will Utah in the future with Kyle Whittingham be able to compete with those programs? Is it going to become harder because you're not there? You don't get those guys. Will programs like Penn State, separate themselves from Wisconsin? Will they get better? I think that's the big thing. And that's why a lot of people thought, Lane Kiffin was going to leave Ole Miss for Auburn because Auburn has more NIL. Even though Ole Miss is really up their game. Wasn't enough for Judkins, though, going to Ohio State. But still, I mean, it's just interesting. I think your point, though, is 100% accurate, about that. I think all these programs, you're going to have a benchmark. As long as you make the playoff, you're good. And that's fine. But it just isn't, to me, like if you're Alabama and you're basing off what Saban's done, or if you're Georgia and you're following up Kirby Smart, whenever he leaves Georgia, it's just you're lowering your standard a bit by saying it's okay to go 10-2, long as you make the 12-team playoff. You're good to go if you win a game, instead of just being a national title contender like we've seen these few teams be the last few years.
So what I'm saying is a little bit different than that, Jeffrey. I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying take a Shane Beamer in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
They would have no chance of ever thinking about going to a playoff. But now there's a 12 team, and sure, they're a far away from that
Mm-hmm.
goal at this point, but it's conceivable. Look at Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, they're suddenly a player for this playoff. But at the
I agree.
places that we're talking about, Georgia, Ohio State,
Mm-hmm.
Alabama, etc., that their
Mm-hmm.
coach, if they can get to the playoffs, and if they don't get to the playoffs, they're not going to be there for long. If they succeed in the playoffs, that's where they're going to be judged
Mm-hmm.
inside the playoffs. And finishing number one in the country and being 12-0 isn't going to be as great and going to be as lifted as high an accomplishment if you're going to the playoffs and losing versus if you become this team that just makes it through an SEC season at 10-2, but you win in the playoffs, then those two losses are going to be forgiven.
I agree. Yeah, I was taking it more from the good teams approach. But yeah,
Yeah.
what you're saying is, again, 100% right. That's why you're the voice of college football. You make fantastic points on that. I agree. I think that another thing, though, is you're talking about the 4-team playoff. It was easier to win because if you got there, all you had to do was win 2 games. Now you're going to have to win more games. So it's going to be harder because even if you're really good, you might slip up. You might play bad. I know people will think, well, the gap's so wide. Alabama would beat a Penn State. I don't think it's that wide. It is wide, but it's not super wide. It's if you don't play well or if injuries mount too, because you're going to be playing more games. And you've even seen that with the NFL. You add an extra game. There's been more injuries than ever before. And it's impacted, a lot of games because of guys not being able to play. So it's going to be really interesting. I don't know. I think the 12-team playoff is good, like you said, for teams like South Carolina and Ole Miss. I mean, if Indiana, if Kurt Signetti can get, a 9-3 seed, 10-2, whatever, and can squeak in there, you never know. I think for a team like that, they would need 16 or 24 teams, but it's interesting. All I know is that I hate to be the person to fall at Nick Saban because whether people believe he's the GOAT or not, I cannot believe, me being born, being a little kid around the time when Alabama started getting great again, and I've watched them win and win. It just almost got to the point where it's like, well, they lost this year, they'll win it next year. It's like, that's how it became. Like, they were always there. And now, like Will, and I've seen a lot of other people say in the chat, are they going to be consistently as good? That's what everybody's waiting to see. That's why people are happy about this. I mean, I've seen like Auburn Twitter's like, he's gone. We have a shot now. It's so great. And like, you were this close this year. What are you talking about? 4th and 31. It's not like you didn't have a shot, but no, like everybody's just excited because he's been that good. Like Kobe Bryant said, people do not like the great ones. And Nick Saban was great and top of the sport. And I don't know if I'm sure another coach is going to get close. Maybe Kirby does it if he keeps winning, but it's going to be very hard for another coach to replicate what Nick Saban just did. It's absolutely unbelievable.
Yes.
And I'm going to miss him being a part of college football and being in Alabama. My family misses him. They're not happy. they're like, no, why is this happening? Yeah, it's like USC, and with the Seahawks fans with Pete Carroll and USC fans. Like, that was big news earlier. I thought that was the big news of the day, and then Saban drops this later. It's been a crazy day with both of them, but it is what it is. I'll let you go, Mark. I know you got a lot of callers behind. Thanks for taking my call, but I am going to miss Nick Saban as part of college football. I'm being an Alabama fan. It means more, but even if I wasn't, he was just so great for the sport. But it's going to be really interesting to see who they hire and if Alabama can stay at the top of the sport. But everybody like and subscribe to the Voice of Voice College Football, and I hope you have a great show, Mark.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We got about 10 calls on the line, and I will do my best to get to everyone. We will get to everyone, so you can keep calling. The StreamYard link should be in the chat. I will drop it in there once again. We will take tons of calls, but please be patient, and we appreciate that. Will, how you doing tonight?
The man that ruined my 11-year-old self is now gone from Alabama. So...
well, we all know how old Will is.
Yeah.
Not that I couldn't have guessed it.
We're going to win. Manti Te'o Everett Golson. Yes. And then I was crying in my room. But it is what it is.
You should have been around at that point, because I did have a channel. I wasn't doing nearly as much content because I was working for someone else, but I kind of called that one.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, you don't think of it that way when you're, but Mark, do you think overall, I was like happy at first, but I'm like, I don't want Georgia to become what Alabama was before Kirby Smart got to Georgia. That's what concerns me. Like, I don't want Georgia to become like the dominant force in college football.
You think
I want it all to be equal.
Kind of keeping Georgia in check.
Yeah, I just hope Georgia stays in check.
If between Texas, Oklahoma, LSU, and we could keep going down the line, a few other schools, if they can't together challenge Georgia, then there is something drastically wrong. There is something drastically wrong with those other schools, their coaches, their programs. If collectively they can't be sharing SEC titles and kind of, putting some losses on the board for Georgia. Because there's nothing that Georgia has in its history. It's not like we're comparing Georgia and the rest of the conference is Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, NC State. These other schools have just as many resources, just as much anything that you would need to be able to compete.
Would you say Mike Norvell has to be their first call? I mean, I feel like
Mike Norvell.
Yeah, that's what I would go with from Florida State. That would be my first choice.
Well, I got to say that Mike Norvell has shown that he took over a culture that was pretty bad. The locker room was awful. There wasn't fight. There wasn't spirit. There wasn't camaraderie, loyalty. All those things had kind of seeped through the program since the latter days of Jimbo Fisher, and Willie Taggart certainly didn't correct it. He wasn't getting the kind of recruits that he needed to keep up Florida State. He didn't inherit nearly as good a roster as Willie Taggart did a year and a half earlier. 2 full recruiting cycles before him, and he still turned it around. So, yeah, he's been phenomenal in the transfer portal. And I can't think, not that Florida State doesn't have money, but I can't think that that's completely NIL related. Of course, they have to have a strong NIL, but they're not just flat out bidding other schools. That's Mike Norvell's ability to connect and recruit and bring in the best transfer portal. They have been the most positively impacted by the transfer portal, and that credit has to go to him.
Mm-hmm. Also, like they kind of went not all in this year, but like I don't think they'll be as. I mean, they could win. The ACC is not great, but they could definitely win the ACC. But I don't think they can compete with the Ohio States and the Georgias this upcoming season. So this will be a good timing for him to leave Florida State and go to Alabama. Like Sarr gets bad timing because he has Quinn Ewers coming back, and I mean he's going to be losing Xavier Worthy and AD Mitchell, but
yeah, Florida State's going to
Texas,
take
the
a
other
step
guys.
back. So Norvell is your guy. He's your
Norvell, then Lanning for me.
Okay. So you want to go the younger route.
Yeah. Just so, like, I don't know, like Bear and Saban lasted a while. So that would be, if I was Alabama, I would be going for a guy that would last a while.
I think it's more and more a young man's game, even more so than it was years ago. There's just too much hustle involved, too much time commitment. And it's always been that. It's always been a grind. Any competitive sports is like that as a head coach. But with NIL and the transfer portal humming all the time, these guys cannot take time off. And you need a guy that I think Norvell and Lanning have proven enough that to show that they've got the experience to run a big time program, but they're still young enough and have that fire. I think either one would be a good selection. There's something about Norvell's demeanor and his approach that I slightly prefer over Lanning.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Ty Guy says D'Amico Ryans, but he's only been a head coach for 1 year. So, like, third, I would go Ryans, and then I would go Schumann, Georgia defensive coordinator, would probably be my other two picks.
D'Amico Ryans.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I would go with those two guys as my, like, second choices, but.
Yeah, I would be leery about going to get the guy that has come onto the scene and had one big season.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Saban, I won't be too long because I know there's 10 callers on the line, but I mean, Saban never lost to Notre Dame, even when he was at Michigan State. So yeah, the guy had the Irish's number for sure. I mean, he only played Notre Dame when Davey was there, I believe.
Yeah, when he was at Michigan State.
Yeah, because 95, 96, they weren't playing Michigan State or Michigan. That was when they were playing Texas and Ohio State instead of the Michigan schools.
So Holtz's last year was 96, correct?
Yeah.
So Bob Davie took over in 97, faced Saban 3 times.
0-3.
And then did they ever play? They didn't play at LSU because Notre Dame played LSU in a bowl game before Saban was there.
That was with Jerry DiNardo.
Yeah.
They had a home and home, and then they had a bowl game too. Mm-hmm.
All right, Will. Anything else?
Right. I won't take up too much time because you got like 10 callers. So, but check out our show tonight. We'll probably do it after your show, so we can have people come over.
Very good.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Will. Take care. All right, let's keep it moving. We've got Matthew joining. Matthew, what's going on tonight?
Nothing much. I was at the gym scrolling on Twitter and I see this and I was shocked. Like I've heard rumors and from guys that seem pretty plugged in, but it just shocked me. And there's even like I was listening to a Texas show earlier and they said Saban was still recruiting and trying to get assistant coaches as like late as yesterday. So it's like, I don't know where this came from. It's crazy. I mean, I respect it because I think you've done everything you possibly can. You've proved your point. You've made as much money as you can. You just bought a $19 million house on an island. Go live there. Have some fun. You're 71 years old. I mean, if I was 71 years old and I had that much money, you'd never see or hear from me again. So I think he's making the right decision. And then just going through the list of candidates, Texas fans are freaking out, and I honestly don't understand why, because it didn't make any sense logically for Sark to go back to Alabama. He was told when he became the Texas head coach, hey, you're the coach in waiting, and guess what? He still chose Texas over Alabama. We can pay more. We have a better recruiting base. You're not following a legend. So I was never afraid to lose Sark. I actually do agree with Will. I think Lanning and Norvell make the most sense. Lanning started his career there as a graduate assistant. Now Oregon, Phil Knight will pay whatever to keep Dan Lanning. I think he's sick and tired of that being like a trampoline spot for coaches where you jump on there and jump to a new team. So I think he gets paid a lot. I think Norvell makes the most sense. The buyout is only $4 million. And we saw what just happened. Alabama got taken over Florida State as a 13-0 team in the ACC. They can't get out of the ACC. Why would you not go to the SEC in Alabama? It just makes way too much sense for Mike Norvell not to be the coach of Alabama. I think he's got to be. So I think that's the number one guy. I think he's going to go there. I think some of these names on this list are freaking hilarious. James Franklin's agent does God's work, because if James Franklin wants to go to Alabama, if I'm Penn State, I'm going to his house, I'm getting the moving truck, and I'm saying, adios, amigos, have fun in Tuscaloosa. Because why? Why would they want James
Wait a
Franklin?
minute. I'm thinking of it kind of in an opposite way. Yes, I know Penn State fans are not happy with James Franklin for obvious reasons, but they just better hang on there. Alabama fans do not want James Franklin. They do not want a guy that keeps losing big games. So I understand why would Alabama be interested in James Franklin? I don't think that they should be interested in James Franklin. But at the same time, Penn State fans need to understand who they are. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't shoot for the moon and national championships, because they've won them in the past. But I don't know that they can do that much better than James Franklin at Penn State. But I'm also saying Alabama should not want James Franklin.
No, I agree with both. But I do think someone could come in and do exactly what James Franklin's doing. I think there's a couple.
Sure.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
saying
what
that
I'm saying.
it can't be done.
Yeah, that was my point. I agree. I think that is the ceiling, or pretty close to the ceiling, at Penn State. But I think there's other guys that can do that, and I don't think Alabama would be happy with that. And I said this on the Texas show earlier. Guys, go check that out on the SEC channel. Be there every Wednesday at 7:30. And I think whoever gets hired is going to be fired within 3 to 4 years anyways. I really do. I don't think they're going to be there because the expectations are way too high. Nick Saban, some crazy stats, has double the amount of draft picks as losses into the NFL. Let me repeat that. Double the amount of draft picks as losses. He has as many first-round picks, almost double, as his losses at Alabama. So, yes, the guy's going to be, whoever gets hired there is not going to do as good of a job. It's just not going to happen. I think we've talked about this, Mark. Alabama was living in fantasy land. You don't win a national title every 3 years. That's what he was doing, basically. Every 3 years, they won a national title. That is gone. That's not going to happen. It's over. So you need to bring yourself back down to reality with the rest of us. The only team that should expect to even come close to that now is Georgia, but I don't think they will either, because I don't think Kirby Smart is anywhere in the realm of Nick Saban. Probably get heat for that, but I just don't think that. So I think Alabama, just refocus on what you are as a program, and you'll be fine. If you do that, you'll be fine. Now, if you don't, the next coach is going to be fired within 3 to 4 years if he doesn't win a national championship. That's what's going to happen. They're going to be like, wow, we've gone 4 years without a national championship with this new coach, and we can do better. Let's fire him. And you're going to be wrong for that, because it's just not going to happen. It's unrealistic. It's against the standards of everyone else in college football. Nick Saban is his standard. That's the standard. There's only him. That's it. For everyone else, that isn't normal. So you got to realize that as an Alabama fan. I hope they do. If you do, I think you'll be fine. They're not going to go down to this world in Nebraska. I don't see that happening. They got too much money, too much pride. And I do think Nick Saban probably is going to have a say in who the coach is going to be. I wouldn't be shocked if he's already talked to who the coach might be. Like, that wouldn't shock me either. I think they'll be fine. As a Texas fan, I'm ecstatic because this opens up a power vacuum in the SEC, I believe. I think it gives us a chance. Alabama has taken so many recruits from us. Them and Ohio State have taken the most recruits from us. One of them's down. If Ryan Day, for whatever reason, gets fired, that's going to be another one down, and that will help Texas as well. We already see Ryan Williams decommit from Alabama as we speak, the number 4 wide receiver in the country. He's going to go to Texas or Auburn. That's what's going to happen. There's already talk that Isaiah Bond will probably enter the transfer portal. That already was talked about last week when they lost Holman Wiggins to A&M. That would be a huge get for us as well. I think Amari Niblack is someone Texas would love to have too, because we need a tight end. I think we'll be fine at wide receiver if we don't get Isaiah Bond, because there's other guys, but that would really help at the tight end position. It'll be interesting to see if any of these guys do enter the transfer portal. But Mark, just your early indications, who do you think will end up being the next head coach?
Well, just one thing to add on to everything that you said. I think that for the typical recruit, there are so many things on the table that weigh into the decision, but making that choice to play for Nick Saban, to play for the greatest of all time, the guy that everyone knows, that edge has been taken off of the Alabama recruiting edge over everyone else. And they're still an elite program, should be, but that kind of evens things out in regards to, okay, your coach is a really good coach. He's just another coach. He's another Sark. He's another Ryan Day. He's another really good coach and respected and wins, but he's not Nick Saban.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So I think the safest choice is obviously if they could have anyone, the safest choice is Kirby Smart.
Yeah.
I don't know why Kirby Smart would leave, except for, like I said to a previous caller, just to show that he can do it and just to show off and move over, unless they're just going to dump more money on him at Alabama than they do at Georgia. But I wouldn't think that they wouldn't counter at Georgia and say, we can hit whatever mark you need. So I don't know what the incentive to leave Georgia would be to just kind of have to start over at it, even though things are rolling. So if they could have anyone, again, I'm taking Kirby Smart, and then I'm taking probably Dabo. But I would have to have a long, hard discussion with Dabo Sweeney before I'd pull the trigger on him, because, again, safer pick than Lanning and Norvell. But like I told Will, between Lanning and Norvell, I'm more of a Mike Norvell guy, because I think he's really had to do some serious work at Florida State. He's had to do a serious lift, versus Lanning at Oregon kind of just took over what Mario Cristobal was doing and fixed the offense and got a transfer quarterback and got an offensive coordinator to help on that side. But if I'm Alabama, I'm going, and all those guys have a lot of years left, so I guess there's no concern there. But I'm staying pretty young. I think it's a pretty young man's game, and is becoming more and more that direction, because it's just a grind. Nobody else has really hit me. I'll be continuing to go through the Rolodex of names, but in order, I would go Norvell. Take Kirby Smart out of the mix.
Yeah.
I go Norvell, Dabo, Lanning.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Dabo, I would agree. I said the same thing on my show, because I did talk Saban at the beginning, and its impact on Texas. Like, Dabo has shown that he doesn't really like the transfer portal. You're gonna have to sit down and talk with him, and like, if you're not gonna use the transfer portal, you're not coming here. Period.
No.
End of story. Because you're gonna get paid a lot of money. You're following a legend who did use the transfer portal and used it pretty damn well, with Jamison Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, and those guys. So you have to use the transfer portal. That's why I just don't think they're going to go there. And I also agree with your point of Norvell and his demeanor. I 100% agree. I think he fits perfectly with that program. And I just think I think that's who it's going to end up being. I think it just makes too much sense. He's at Florida State in a lost conference. If they were in the SEC, I don't think he leaves, but they're in the ACC. And I think he's just going to end up jumping. And I feel bad for Florida State fans, but it's the truth of the matter. You guys are in a second-tier conference at this point. It's the Big Ten, SEC, and then everyone else. So if you can somehow get out of the ACC in the next couple months, then you'll probably keep him. If not, I think he's gone, and I think he'll go to Alabama. But it's been a hell of a day, because Texas also lost their defensive line coach, who I think is the best in the country, and got paid a lot of money. LSU paid him $1.5 million to leave Texas. He was already making 1.1 at Texas, and also part of the deal was his son is going to get to transfer to LSU. I think Texas wasn't willing to do that because his son, no offense, not a very good player. He's from Southeast Louisiana. So it would have taken up a roster spot that we can't afford to lose when we've lost Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat. And honestly, I don't think LSU could afford to lose it either because they've lost a lot of pieces off their defensive line. But I also just want to bring up this last point too, Mark. This is going to be a crazy offseason because whoever takes this job is probably going to be also a good coach. That's going to be leaving a good program. If it's Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss, with that roster that he just recruited, Dan Lanning, Oregon, going into the Big Ten, I mean, that's another big domino to fall. And that's crazy to me. And then you're going to have to hire from another school that's probably pretty good too, probably a lower school, but still a good school. And then that's another domino to go. So I think we're in for an absolutely crazy college offseason. It's going to be very interesting how quick Alabama deals with this to keep guys on board. I just can't wait because it'll be interesting with that call-in show. I bet you're going to put up some crazy numbers with viewership when the Alabama coach does get hired, Mark. But that's all I got for you tonight, and I hope you guys join me next Wednesday. And go check out my video too tonight because we talked on this and its domino effects as well.
Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah, no
Appreciate
problem.
it. Again, it's Matthew Miller. He does a show for us every Wednesday night. It's on the SEC channel. We got the SEC channel. You can grab the link in the description section. It says SEC channel. Grab the link right there. Matthew shows every Wednesday night at 7:30 Eastern time. All right, let's keep moving. But before I take the next call, let's pick up on these super chats. And I appreciate Tide Guy letting us know. Thank you so much for that. That Nick Saban's successor could be announced tomorrow. Wow, that's a quick turnaround. All right, thank you, Nick, for the contribution. Jim Harbaugh clearly broke Nick Saban, no doubt. Well, I don't think there's any question about that. That's not up for debate. Nick Saban just couldn't take losing to Michigan. Certainly, he just figured we're done. Look at this giant. Look at this Michigan football giant. We can't compete with that. All right. Then we've got, hey, Nick coming back with this one. 2023 Michigan defense is better than the 21 Georgia defense. No cap. Okay. I have not made that comparison. I doubt if they're going to produce the type of NFL first round talent that Georgia defense did. We also have Fishing 247 Sports, or Fishing, 247. When you say 247 Sports as much as I do in a day's time, then it just automatically flies off the mouth there. Fishing 247. Gus Malzahn to Alabama. Yeah. Well, Gus Malzahn had the best winning percentage against Nick Saban. He was the one guy that would fairly routinely win those games against Bama. I think 3-5. Fishing 247, Deion Sanders. Well, they do the commercials together. I'm sure Nick has put in a good word for Deion. All right, let's get to the next call here at the Voice of College Football. And on cue, it's Tide Guy.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I am doing just fine. Appreciate you stopping by. How do you take all this in?
Well, you like to remember your childhood, but today reminds me when I was 12 years old, 10 days before Christmas, Bear Bryant announced he retired. Kind of got that same feeling today. It's hard when you lose, a great one.
Yes, it is. And my goodness, how many times was there a point in his career during this tenure at Alabama where it just seemed ridiculous that he had just won another championship, and there were thoughts that, well, he's got to retire now. He's 65, he's 68, he's won another championship. When's he going to retire? But I got to say that he has lulled me to sleep, because I used to be in that mode every offseason thinking maybe Nick Saban's going to hang him up. But he's always said that he enjoyed the job and loves working with the players. And he has stated, when I stop enjoying it is going to be the time when I stop doing it. And I hope that was his decision. Well, I know it was his decision, but I hope that was at the core of his decision, just his own personal peace and happiness.
Well, when I first heard the news today, I was concerned about Miss Terry, because I always said Nick Saban would retire if something would happen to his wife, because I mean, he was recruiting just 2 days ago. He was hiring coaches just 2 days ago. So for him to turn around and say he's retiring, I was worried about maybe a health issue or something like that. And if you look at Nick Saban and you watch Bama games the last 2 years, that wasn't Nick Saban. I mean, Nick Saban did not yell at the players like he used to. Miss Terry, halfway through this season, had to get on him. And if you notice, about halfway through the season, he started yelling again and started, but I mean, he was just kind of off the last 2 years. So, maybe he did decide that, maybe he lost a little bit of the passion. Maybe, it just felt right for him.
Yeah, he is so good at what he does. He can be off his game and be better than 98% of the guys that he's competing against, but that's not his standard. And so some people have it in them, and I respect either one. Some people have it in them to, if let's say I'm going in my mind to baseball players, that as long as they get cut by this team and that team and they hang on with this team and they're a career 300 hitter, but as long as somebody picks them up and they can hit 215, they don't care. They are going to play until nobody will take them. There are other professionals that have a certain standard, and even if they're a bit off their game, even though they're better than just about everybody else, it's not their standard and they don't feel right about it. And they say, hey, it's time.
Yeah, because I mean, I think everybody could say that with the 12-team playoff, Bama's going to make the next 3 playoffs if Saban's there. You would assume,
Sure.
With the 12-team, that it's going to be a lot easier for him to make the playoff. And there would be a good chance that we could win at least one more in the next 3 years if Nick Saban were to stay and have the passion and the drive that he had. So, I mean, he kind of is going out. Yeah, we lost the last 3 years and not won a championship, but he still is going out on top. And he's still going out as a coach that you would have to put odds on favored at least one of the top 5 of the next year to win a championship next year. Alabama has to be one of the top 5. And so, he goes out somewhat on top.
Yeah, I consider this on top. A lot of people would be technical about it and say that there's only one team on top. And of course, that's technically true, but he's on top of the sport. He's still taking teams to playoffs, still won the SEC this year. Shoot, Alabama could be the national champion right now, despite all of their weaknesses and shortcomings as a football team based on their standard. They could still be the national it wouldn't have taken much for them to be the national champion right now.
Well, think about it. When we punted the ball and Michigan dropped it, if that ball went another foot, he's in the end zone, we could have won that game.
There you go.
I mean, I'm not taking anything against Michigan.
Sure.
Michigan, you guys beat our ass. You deserve to win. I'm glad, I'm happy for you, but we had our chances in that game. We could have done it. I did want to let you know that what I'm hearing from people at Tuscaloosa, and one of the persons is Marquise Mays, and he is in the know at Alabama, that Alabama has the coach hired, or at least in principle, it's hired, and it is supposed to be announced tomorrow afternoon. I have no idea who they've hired. That has not been released, but per him and 2 other Alabama players, they know the coach. It's been agreed to. The coach is going to be in town tomorrow, going to sign the contract and be ready to talk to all the recruits and try to keep as many of them as possible.
Tide guy, first question, who do you want? Second question, who do you think it will be?
Well, Will gave you my answer. I like DeMeco Ryans. I liked him when he was defensive coordinator at San Francisco the 2 years before he became a head coach at Houston. I wanted Alabama to hire him as our defensive coordinator. I thought if we could have got him as the defensive coordinator under Nick Saban could teach him a little bit, that we could have possibly hired him as a DC and moved him into, you're the next coach. Unfortunately, he's not going to leave the Houston Texans, making the playoffs, making that kind of money. I disagree with you on Dabo Sweeney. I don't think he would be a good Bama coach for many reasons. One, he's not a transfer portal guy. He's not a great recruiter. I mean, he does wonders with players and, he coaches them up. But recruiting wise, he's not really a top 10 recruiter. And the other thing is, and you go back and think of everybody Alabama's had as a coach since Bear Bryant, he's a nice guy. And nice guys haven't won very many games at Alabama. You look at Mike Shula, who was a nice guy. He was more of a player's coach than a hard ass like Stallings and that, So I don't know. I like Dabo Sweeney, and I think he'd be a great coach. I just don't know that he's a fit at Alabama.
But Dabo Sweeney is pulling in top 10 recruiting classes at Clemson.
Yeah, no, that's true. But he's not willing to do the transfer portal, and I think that.
Well, like I said, that was my condition on that hiring. That would have to be. That would be a must. That would be a condition that would be made, that we are in a different age of college football. There is no way we can hit our standard without the transfer portal. So you have to be active in the transfer portal, and we are going to give everything that we're currently doing. We're going to continue on that road, and you're going to have to not only buy into it, you're going to have to drive it.
Yeah. I mean, at Alabama, you're going to have to pick up, 2 or 3 great players from the portal every year to stay up on top.
Yeah.
Now the coach I think that we probably hired is Lanning. I really think that. I personally think Kiffin would come to Alabama, and I think he'd be a good coach. The problem is he's not mature yet. He is not, even though he coached under Saban and he's made great strides, you look at him, he's still a little bit of an unknown and a little immature for Alabama boosters' tastes.
And see, Tide Guy, that's why I made the separation between Norvell and Lanning when pressed a few callers ago, because I put their accomplishments and the level of impressiveness of their jobs, although Norvell had a lot less to work with, but he seems more Alabama class. And I'm not taking away from Lanning, but Lanning has been a little loose with his tongue, likes to call teams out. He called out Dion. He called out Colorado. He did that with a few other. He likes to, I'm not going to say he's thin-skinned. I just think that's part of his demeanor. He wants to fight back a little bit and play that war of words a little bit, and that's really not Alabama's style.
Right. And see, that's kind of the problem with Kiffin. I mean, he likes to make stupid little comments.
Well, he really, he gets
on Twitter way too much.
Yeah, that's him every day. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing, and I mean, this shouldn't knock him, but it is a knock. I mean, he's one of the few coaches that are single. And he had a little bit of a problem being single at Alabama the first time. And, I mean, I think Kiffin would be a great coach at Alabama. I mean, look what he's done at Ole Miss. Now you give him Alabama's money and Alabama's recruiting.
Yeah, that's what he's complained about. So.
Yeah, because he's not going to win at Ole Miss, unfortunately. I think he's kind of at his ceiling this year, kind of hit his ceiling. 10-2 during a regular season. That's about as high as he's going to get, especially now adding Oklahoma and Texas to the rotation, knowing now every other year he's going to have to play Georgia. There's too many big games coming up. He's at his ceiling, where if he went to Alabama, I think he could bring us a championship. I just think there's too many negatives for the administration and the boosters to want him.
I agree, Tide Guy.
But I will let you go. I know you got a lot of callers, but I just wanted to call in and let you know what I knew and tell you, yeah, it's a very sad day for Bama fans. I know everybody's all over the country is happy. They think the dynasty is over, but you know what? It was over in 1983 too, and we found a way to come back. We'll be back.
That's right. Well, Tide Guy, before you leave, I want to tell you that we can appreciate, because we're all sports fans for a reason. It's an emotional attachment. And so, yeah, we feel for you, even though you've enjoyed a lot of good times. and it's taken a long time for it to end. It could have ended 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So you got a lot out of Nick Saban, certainly, but when it finally comes, it was never long enough, I guess. And also appreciate you giving us that tidbit about tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised about it. I
Yeah.
can't wait, because I want the coach's name today. You know how it is when you lose somebody, you want to know right away who's replacing them, and for me, it almost makes sense that they would almost have to have a coach ready for Saban to retire. This had to have been talked about, So, but I look forward to seeing your show tomorrow and discussing who our coach will be.
Sounds good, Tide Guy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, what he said there was pretty obvious, I think, to everyone. As soon as, if this does, in fact, get announced tomorrow that Alabama has hired its new coach, then this has been in the planning stages. There have been contingencies placed out there. They didn't pick up the phone tonight after Nick Saban retired and surprised everyone and surprised Alabama and then scurried through a bunch of interviews. No, this has been worked out. If, in fact, that comes to fruition about the announcement tomorrow. We've got Nick, who is saying, Thamel reporting Mark D'Antonio to be next Alabama head coach. We supposed to believe that? No. We got DeReal MVP here. DeReal, what's going on?
Crazy day, Mark. Crazy day. The greatest coach of all time retires. I mean, it had to happen, Mark,
Yep.
but I just didn't expect it this way. I guess I want to take a more holistic approach than everybody else has so far. To me, this is a giant red flag for where the direction of college football is going. Because I believe Nick Saban could coach for 5, 6, 7 years and be where he's at right now. But I just don't think the direction of the game is where Saban wants it to go, so he's checking out.
Yeah, well, he has certainly said a lot of things. He has taken a lot of opportunities since NIL and the transfer portal exploded to voice his despair to a certain extent. That's a heavy word there, but to voice his thoughts and feelings about the game not going in the direction that he would like. And I think he is great with recruiting. I think he's great with going to practice every day, working with the players, seeing them develop, watching film, coaching the games, going to the fundraiser, doing all the things that he's always done, but messing around with you got to recruit your own locker room now. You got to make sure that those guys aren't leaving, in addition to figuring out who else is out there. Look at all the more scouting these teams have to do. They have to know that, Syracuse has a pretty good left tackle. Let's go scout him, watch film on him now. And we got to, there's a Michigan State tight end we like. Now we got to watch film on him in addition to recruiting. Yeah, the job has become so much more laborious.
Yeah, I think Mike Fort has cracked the code on this one. It's just the parody that Nick Saban can't handle, Mark. College football is known for its parody over the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, my goodness. Alabama, I guess they were completely irrelevant and off the map, Mark, this year. I can't believe it. Have you seen the title odds for next year, by the way, Mark?
I did. It seemed pretty cut and dry with what it's been in the past.
Yeah, and all that parody coming out. And those talent rankings that don't matter. I'm sure it was just a coincidence that the top 3 teams in the talent rankings and the top 3 teams have the best odds to win it all. Just a coincidence, Mark.
Well, I will say that, and Michigan fans have every right to take a shot at Ohio State, because I saw those odds as well that coincide right with what the recruiting rankings were in December, where Michigan's like 18th or something like that, and Ohio State's number 3, and Ohio State's higher in the Vegas odds to win the national championship next year too.
Yeah, I was told to trust the odds by Michigan fans, so I'm going to trust their advice because I was wrong about them this year. It was just a weird season all around, Mark. I mean, honestly, it was kind of like a 1% season in a way. I mean, you had a team go 13-0, miss the playoffs. You had a team in Georgia that I think was clearly the best team all year. I mean, they dominated Ole Miss. They dominated a team that was a Penn State level team that missed the playoffs outright. Very strange year, Mark. And hopefully next year, I think the problem that Nick Saban retired from is you're going to have to beat up on the same teams 2-3 times. I mean, how fun is it for Nick Saban? He's going to beat up on Ole Miss like 45-3 three times in one season. Where's the challenge in that for him?
Well, I'm just sitting here deciding whether I'm going to take up this fight or not. I think you're taking it a little bit far in regards to some of those statements about Georgia.
I think they were pretty good, Mark. I think if we put them against anybody in the country not named Alabama, I think they would probably control the game. I think Alabama has that special magic called Nick Saban that prevented them from winning. Honestly, this was the best coaching job I think I've ever seen when Nick Saban did this year.
I will repeat the same thing that the Vegas odds are showing us for next season, that if we suddenly these guys just felt like playing again, let's start playing again. And we said, let's take the 4 best teams or the 8 best teams, and we're going to play a tournament. I would tend to take Georgia, but I don't want to take anything away from Michigan, because Michigan took apart, once they had to go through a championship game and an Alabama semifinal game after playing Ohio State and Penn State. Actually, their schedule and their number of victims turned out to be more impressive than Georgia's, and they did it. So I don't know that we can say Georgia. We can't say, it's ridiculous to state that Georgia is definitely the best team.
It's just my opinion, Mark.
It's your opinion. Yes, absolutely. And
Michigan fulfilled the requirements.
I tend to agree with you, but
Michigan, as of right now, fulfilled the requirements to win the national title. I mean, this, Marcus, I'm sure you know, is currently a disputed national championship because the NCAA is having the stallion above them at all times. So it is a disputed national championship as of right now. Does that mean I think it's going to go away and the NCAA is going to vacate it? I do not think that. But there is a above 0% chance it does go away.
I would state it the other way. I would say that it's a undisputed national championship. And we'll wait and see if it at some point becomes a disputed national championship.
Okay, that's fair enough. If you want to phrase it that way, you can also phrase it that way.
Proven guilty. And we know that they're guilty to a certain extent, but that has been dealt with and punished. The degree at which they were found guilty has been dealt with. At least that's how I look at it.
That, you know what, Mark, that's actually very fair, and I can respect that take. I think that's very fair and valid. But Mark, I'm seeing a lot of names being thrown around for Alabama. I thought Sark was probably the name I would go after first. I like Lanning, but I just don't think he has enough coaching experience under his belt. I mean, he's done great over the first 2 years, but he hasn't won those semifinal games or even a New Year's Six bowl game that I'm really impressed with. I mean, he destroyed Liberty, but they're Liberty, so who cares?
Yes, he basically beat Vandy in the Fiesta Bowl. So, sorry, everyone. Maybe it was Arkansas. We'll make that comparison. And I know Group of Five fans do not like me picking on their representative, but that's about what it was. It was Oregon playing Arkansas. And maybe not. Maybe Arkansas would have played them better. No, it's a great point that you're making about Lanning. It's 2 seasons. It is 2 seasons. He did remarkable work at Georgia, and people are mighty high on him. But yes, Sark, he didn't do remarkable work at USC or Washington, but we know what he was dealing with off the field. And for just him to be operational is it's a testament to him that he got past all of his off-field issues, and he ran 2 huge programs at a decent rate. That made it difficult for me to see him to ascend to this Texas position, coming off 2 marginal efforts at Washington and USC, but I've been proven wrong because he's taken a team to the college football playoff. So, yeah, and now that he's been in the program at Alabama and he's worked with Nick Saban, he's worked right next to the greatest, learned from him, I think that should be in consideration.
I think so, too. I agree with everything you said. I just don't think for the moment Lanning's the guy. But he could be the guy. I don't know. But
He
anyway,
took
Mark,
over a team and a program that was doing rather well anyway. He certainly made it better, but that's pretty much what he's done. He's been recruiting well, pretty much recruiting at the same level that Mario Cristobal was, and he's eliminated the game blunders, the in-game blunders, the game preparation blunders, and so he's won a couple more games than Mario Cristobal. Where Mike
right, but
Norvell has just resurrected the Florida State program.
right. The question is where it comes to Dan Lanning is how many coaches could have done that? Because Mario Cristobal, in my opinion, in terms of just pure coaching, is one of the worst coaches out there. Recruiting, he's the best, but coaching, he's just so awful. It's unexplainable. And to be honest with you, I know this is a very small thing, but when you're talking about the absolute best of the best, you have to pick on small things. Him not being able to beat Washington 1 out of 2 times is kind of surprising because I thought Oregon was the better team both times. And in neither game did they look like they even had a realistic chance to win.
Yeah, you and everyone else, and including me, thought that Oregon was better, and Vegas did as well. So when Vegas, and I know that I argue this from both sides, so this is one time in which I will admit that I talk from both sides of my mouth at times when it comes to Vegas odds, but they do know what they're doing. And for them to have evaluated that Oregon team to be 10 points better than Washington and to have a rematch, and for them to, now it turned out to be a fairly close game, but they got whipped right out of the gate and they were obviously outcoached and underprepared to start the game, is a bit of a warning sign.
Right. And I just want to wait for more time. It's something he can easily fix. And that's why I don't think Alabama should go after a Lincoln Riley type either. They're just too young, in my opinion. I would get somebody that's older and more experienced in the game itself.
So your number one choice is?
Sark.
Okay, is Sark. Okay. All right, Darrell. Anything else?
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm sure I've got the Michigan fans upset because I see in the chat about recruiting rankings and Mike Fort's upset about my parody comments. So I'm sure you're going to have a great show. Congrats to Nick Saban, the greatest coach of all time. How many more losses did Jim Harbaugh need to match Nick Saban, Mark? How many?
Jim Harbaugh has lost 25 games, and Nick Saban, I would have to add it up.
It was like 28, I think. So, hopefully Jim Harbaugh can win like 110 or 120 more games in a row in order not to catch Nick Saban in losses.
Yes, I will do that math, and we will announce that here with the next few callers. Thanks, Darrell.
No problem.
All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. I think I've caught up on Super Chats, maybe not. We've got also Nick chiming in with Charlie Baker said Michigan won fair and square. Who's Charlie Baker? Somebody fill me in on that one. All right, let's get to the next call. Oh, yeah. Here we got the Michigan contingent showing up now. Michigan man.
Well, Charlie Baker's the president of the NCAA.
Oh, is he really? I had forgotten that.
I'm glad I came in after Darrell because I hate to burst his bubble, but when the NCAA president comes out tonight and says Michigan won their title fair and square.
Oh, he said that tonight. Okay.
I hate to tell you, nothing's getting vacated. Nothing. You don't come out and say they won their championship fair and square.
No, that's
and then vacate a championship. It is not going to happen.
Yeah, that is a bold statement for him to make. He would have to be a complete moron to put himself in a precarious situation if he didn't know for sure what the outcome of this investigation is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, I get why Darrell's a little salty towards Michigan, man. He's picking against them all year. I don't blame him, for feeling a little salty, but I got to burst his bubble. Nothing's getting vacated. You don't make a statement like that and then vacate something. You just don't do it.
Statement. Michigan's having a great week. They win the national championship, and then they, despite all the trolling and people, and I hope that I've done and been very fair in any kind of questions I've raised. For one thing, I've said leading into the playoffs and the championship game, we're not talking about any of that. And then in the aftermath of the championship, I said, we're not talking about that. And then when I was pressed by a number of people to say something about it, all I said was, we know that there was one rogue member of the staff that cheated, that did all the things that we've talked about. And you have been a great contributor in bringing a ton of facts and information to the table to say, but that's been dealt with. That was dealt with by the Big Ten. There was suspension. So in my eyes, that part of it was dealt with. And so until anything else comes out that is going to extend that to some kind of systemic problem, it's been dealt with and it's over. So
yeah, and he's gonna know more than, I mean, he knows everything that's going on.
Yeah.
I still think they're gonna punish Michigan in some degree. I just think they will.
Big Ten did, unless they want to say, yeah, I think the NCAA is going to want to put their stamp of, finalization on it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I think that statement makes it clear that it's not going to be as severe as a lot of people thought it was going to be, and it's not going to be as severe as certain fan bases hoped it was going to be. Because you don't make a statement like that if it's going to be if you're throwing a hammer at a program, you don't come out and be like, yeah, they won their championship fair and square. You just don't say that. And then I think I've been listening to callers, man. Kirby Smart's living on cloud 9 right now because he has a chance to be the next Saban right now. When you talk about all the recruiting wars he had with Nick Saban, do you realize that he could really take over college football right now? He could really step the foot on the throat of college football right now. He could take all that recruiting. He already kills in recruiting. But now that Nick Saban's not there, I mean, sky's the limit for Kirby Smart and Georgia.
Well, I get what you're saying, and it's a pretty logical statement to make. However, I just can't imagine that with as many football programs, with as many good coaches, and with as much resource is out there amongst all of them, that they're going to allow one school and one coach to rule and reign as much as Nick Saban has over the last 15 years. You know what I mean? I cannot say that LSU, Michigan, Ohio State, Clemson, on and on and on, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, USC, that Georgia's going to be able to grab that many players and keep them. I
think so, man. And my argument, I actually have the counter argument to it. It's he won back-to-back national championships with Nick Saban being there.
Sure.
And now he's not there. And he already was recruiting in the top 3. And now you don't have that roadblock? You kidding me?
No, I mean, he made a logical point. I just tend to not agree with it. But
that's fine. That's fine.
It makes total sense. I'm telling you, it makes total sense what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think if you had to pick someone that could possibly, be the heir apparent.
Oh yeah.
Prince of the throne.
Yes.
It's Kirby Smart, and I think it's by a large gap.
Yeah, I agree.
I disagree with Darrell that they were the best team this year. That just sounds like that's just a salty statement to me. When Michigan, they beat the team that, and all quite honestly, I know Bama won by 3 points, but they controlled that game. I mean, they had their chance. I mean, I just don't like statements like that. Like, I personally hate statements like that. Michigan, clearly. No, maybe not clearly, but to most people, even Paul Feinbaum on ESPN was like, yeah, they're the best team. He was asked directly, would you pick Georgia in a matchup? He's like, no, I picked Michigan. To me, they clearly showed they were the best team in the country this year. So I just think people got, if you want to say Georgia, that's fine, but just tip the cap, man. It's okay. Tip the cap to Michigan.
No, but I think you can do both. I am tipping the cap to Michigan, and if anybody says that I'm not, I've gone overboard.
I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about
I know, but I'm just about to make a statement that I don't know who the best team in the country is, but Michigan won the national championship, so they should be considered the best team in the country because they earned it. But I'm just saying that if they all went out there and played another tournament, 4 teams, 8 teams, and everybody in there that had a chance of winning a national championship. So I'm going to throw Georgia in there in addition to the 4 that we saw, and I'm going to throw Ohio State in there. And there we go. Let's play a 18 playoff.
Oh yeah, 100%. And do I think
I'm just saying that I would have a difficult time determining who's the best team, and I'm not going to say Ohio State or Texas or anybody. I think it's Georgia or Michigan. But
yeah, I agree with that.
Out of respect, out of Michigan's what they accomplished, and that they beat the team that Georgia did not beat. That yes, I understand your statement, and I agree with you that Michigan fans should feel slighted or take some offense to somebody saying, "Well, somebody else is the best." No, you won 15 consecutive games, and you beat for all the knocks on the schedule. The schedule, when it was all rolled out, turned out to be a pretty murderer's row of Penn State, Ohio State, Alabama, and Washington. So
4 top 10 teams, like.
Yeah.
And one of them was a 14-0 Washington team that, leading up to the game, everyone was like, how are you going to stop 3 NFL wide receivers and the guy that should have won the Heisman and the Joe Moore Award winning offensive line? Yeah. So there's that. But and then Nick Saban, man, he the GOAT. I am sad to see him go, man, because, when it comes to sports, you always want to see greatness. Even if you don't like the team, even if you don't like the coach. When greatness leaves the sport, you can't help but feel a little sad about it, even if you don't like them.
Yeah, that's a great point because I did not like the Bulls. I didn't like Michael Jordan when they were winning, but I missed it when they packed it all in and he took off and when all that came to an end. Like I missed those great playoff runs and just the greatness of it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just something special about, no matter how you feel about the person or the team, there's just something special about watching something being executed at such a great level that you rarely see. And that's what Nick Saban did. He executed at a level that we rarely see across all sports. And, it should be celebrated. In terms of who going to take over, man, yeah, you're not going to fill that gap. And I think that this is probably the biggest. This one thing can change college football because it opens up so much to me. Like I said, Kirby Smart can step in there, really try to clinch the sport. Other teams probably feel like, oh man, Nick Saban's he's gone. Like we got a chance.
Yeah, Brian Kelly.
Yeah, Brian Kelly's probably ecstatic, man, because he's on that side of the SEC. Wait, did they change? Correct me. Did they change divisions at all next year?
Oh man, I should above anybody else know this because I've broken this down enough. I'm going to have to verify that. I don't think they've come out with an announcement of what they have their schedule. They've come out with a schedule.
If they kept the same divisions, Brian Kelly's he's ecstatic because
they have either not announced it or they're going to just a 1 through 16 lineup because I know that it would have stuck in this brain what they did with Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah, but if they did keep the divisions and they, and they didn't go the route the conferences seem to be going, he's got to feel great because that leaves that side of the conference wide open. Honestly.
Yep.
And you know what? I think Ohio State's going to be so stacked next year. Everybody's coming back. Absolutely everybody coming back. And I want to be surprised if some, of those Alabama players, don't want to get some get back at Michigan, for being the last team that, beat they guy, that beat Nick Saban.
That is going if JJ comes back, and regardless, I'm going to have all due respect for Michigan, regardless of who comes back, just whoever puts on those uniforms and helmets. I'm kind of back in the 1990s and just fearing that game to a certain extent. But if JJ comes back and Harbaugh comes back, especially, wow. Like you're saying, Ohio State's kind of gearing up. and loading
They're
up.
stacking up, man. It's crazy.
Yeah,
And I said before the year, I mean, I don't know if you remember this. I said before the year, I always felt like 2024 was a rebuild kind of year.
Yeah.
Just because of the way we've recruited. And honestly, at this point, I don't harp on recruiting as much with Michigan, especially if Harbaugh stays, because they've proven at this point that they don't need to recruit, bananas to get results. But at the same time, you're losing really the core of that run for the most part.
Yeah.
Even if JJ comes back, you're losing Corum. You're losing a lot of those defensive guys. You're losing a lot of that O-line. So to me, regardless, 2024 was always going to be a rebuild year to me. And Ryan Day has to win that game next year, man. Considering it's a rebuild year to me, and it's at home. Like, if he doesn't win that game, man, oh, man. I mean, what do you think? You agree with that? Like, that's got to be the most titanic result if he doesn't win that game.
Well, I think that a college football coach runs into a double-edged sword if the expectations are that high and they don't have the talent to get it done. Well, it's their fault because they acquire the players. But if they've got all the talent and they don't get it done, well, then they didn't prepare them and didn't scheme well enough. So, yeah, there are no excuses. There are never excuses, or should not be, at Ohio State. Yeah, they now this is not going to help them for this season, but they just got a commitment from the number one cornerback in the nation about 3 days ago, and they got what's expected to be a commitment from like the number 3 cornerback, and they're both out of Houston.
Oh yeah, I've been noticing that too. Your guys' secondary coach been killing it, man. He been killing it on the recruiting trail, and have you guys slacked a little bit on the defensive side past couple years? Yeah, but you guys always recruit. I mean, Alabama, Georgia level. That's never an issue. The issue the past couple years has just been getting that talent to perform at that level that they're supposed to perform at, which they perform pretty close. But I just think next year is like that's a make or break year because to me, Michigan, I hope they just it's a reload year, but I don't see it. I think there's too much replacement that has to go on for them to really reload, and I just don't see. I think 2025 is more Michigan's year. 2026, if they're going to make a run. 2024, I got to see it, man. I don't know what the product's going to be. Unlike this year where I was like, oh, we winning it. I don't feel that way going to 2024, but I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, none of us should be doubting anything that Harbaugh puts out there now.
I agree, man. I agree, but I try to be as realistic as I can. So, and a lot of your players that are coming back, they've proven that they can win 11 games at least. You know what I'm saying? So we know that for a certainty. Michigan, we don't know what we're going to be really working with next year. We know some of it, like little, Mason Graham, some guys like that. But for the most part, the offensive line, running back, all that, we don't really know, and I got to see it. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, well, that defensive front is still coming back and going to be strong.
Oh, you know that. All right, man. I'm out of here.
All right, man. Thanks. Let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. And, let me make it very clear. Michigan fans, I got to say that you have every right to, now this wouldn't be the classiest way to go about it, but just be crazy in everybody's face. Because I don't know anybody out there that was not a Michigan fan that really believed that this was going to happen. I don't think most Michigan fans thought, if we could go back to 2020, what Michigan fans were thinking that they were going to win 3 consecutive Big Ten championships, go to playoffs, and win a national championship. So this doesn't happen often. Just embrace it, love it, soak it up, shout about it, cheer, go crazy. You have the right. All right. Let's keep it moving. We've got Mike here. You change your name about it? Oh, national champs. Well, that's right to the point.
Well, we have to update it because we are national champs.
It's a good looking shirt and a good looking name there. Yeah, national champs. Absolutely. You are.
Oh, and before we get started, can you get Nick's new super chat. That's
Oh.
one that we really need to see.
Oh, okay.
He got it.
Oh,
He
man.
he
All
popped
right,
a 20 in there.
Yeah, let me get my glasses so I can read these correctly. Oh, what happened to my glasses? Anyway, I'll just blow up the screen. Here we go from Nick. Thank you so much for this. Mark, be honest. Even though you dislike Harbaugh's communications style, you wish Jim Bear hugged you like he did Jack Harbaugh. Okay, this is getting strange. You hate the fact that you deep down adore Jimmy. The heart wants what it wants. Don't fight it. Oh boy. Okay.
Oh no, please respond. I'm love to hear
Well, my
this.
response is that yeah, I tend to judge people on the way they communicate, and I do that unfairly sometimes. And Jim Harbaugh, I have always thought, what is this guy talking about half the time? He's a loon. He's off in no man's land. What's he? But I have recognized the brilliance of it, that he is an extremely intelligent guy, for one thing. He's just kind of aloof, just kind of a different, awkward kind of guy. And then when it comes to his track record speaks for itself. Now, all of that gushiness, I don't know where that came from. No, I don't. I can think of two really, yeah, I'll extend it to like 4 or 5 guys on this planet that I want to hug from, but it's really about 2. It's my son. I hug him every chance I get, and my brother, I can take or leave getting a hug from him. It's fine. But then that's pretty much the end of the list. And maybe 3 friends. And shoot, I can think of one of my best friends. He never wants to hug. He's not the hug type. A couple other ones are. But yeah, Jim Harbaugh, no hugs from Jim Harbaugh. Thank you. I would like to interview the guy. I'd like to shake his hand and interview him. How about that?
That
I'd
was
be
just a great super
fascinated
chat.
to interview him. And I wouldn't be hard on him or anything, but it would be, I think maybe I would ask some questions that he's not being asked. It'd be a great football discussion.
Well, that was worth the $20, I think.
So thank you for that, Nick. Appreciate that.
Okay, there is one thing I want to address, and we're going to
Yes.
go back to the real talk.
Oh boy. Yeah.
I mean, can we be honest the fact that one of the reasons, in fact, I think the main reason that Saban won so much is because pre-portal, he was basically stacking his stable with horses to the point that he couldn't even use them. It was just keeping them away from everybody else.
Yep.
I mean, it's not really fair when, I mean, maybe the 6th best wide receiver in your class could start at 100 other schools.
Those kids make that decision.
Yeah, and I never understood it.
I didn't either.
I mean, it seems like if I was a kid that was like getting towards the bottom part of the ESPN 300, say like a 150, 200, 250, and I'm the 8th defensive end in my class. If the number 1, number 3, and number 6 defensive ends all go Bama, I'm not going to Bama. There ain't no way I'd start. I mean, unless I was just like supremely confident in my talent.
Yes.
The point that,
okay. So that's the first thing, is that if you're a true athlete and you believe in your ability, maybe you've got a chip on your shoulder that you're ranked 243 and the other 3 guys are 6, 19, and 23 in the rankings. So you believe that you're better than that. The other part of that is, in more the traditional collegiate way that we've all grown up with, the thought would be, I'll sit as a freshman. I won't see a snap. Maybe as a sophomore, I'll play some special teams. Maybe I'll get lucky. Somebody gets hurt. I'll get my chance. But then as a junior, I'm going to play as a junior. I'm going to play as a senior.
well, now that, you can be 3 and out, I mean, if you're that good, you only have to play 1 year, but I mean, you just have to really be overly confident in your skills back then because the price of failure was too high. Because even if you were, say if you were a top 10 at your position, but the four of the other 9 guys are on your team, no NFL scouts will ever see that. There'll be no tape on you. I mean, that's a risky proposition.
I hear what you're saying.
So I mean, if I was, the 12th best wide receiver in my class, but 4 of the other 11 went to Alabama, I'd rather go to a Texas A&M or an Arizona or a Kansas State or a Boston College, because at least I know I'm going to get on the field there. I'm going to probably be the first wide receiver they've got. I'm going to be able to showcase my skills. I might not have the best quarterback, but at least I know that I'm going to have tape on me.
I've also thought about it like this. When Alabama was just ripping off national championships, that's always a special thing. It's always a great thing. And we remember all sorts of great Alabama players. There is something special about what Michigan just did, that your Blake Corum, your a number of players that we could name that will be able to say, regardless of what happens, if Michigan goes on some amazing run or this is the only national championship for a long, long time, they'll still be able to either say we were the first or we were the only, and that's special. Whereas it's more of a conveyor belt at Alabama. Every graduating class there for, I think, pretty much his entire career, won a national championship at some point. So everyone wins a national championship at Alabama.
Yep. I mean, they never went more than 3 years without one. But the question is, were you a part of that national championship team, or at least one of the other teams that could, make a splash? Because, I mean, I refuse to believe that people went to Alabama because they were in love with Nick Saban. They just know that he was their ticket to get into the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't so much like a family culture in Tuscaloosa. It was just a highway to the NFL and to get those millions of dollars.
A recruit released a Skype or a Zoom call with Nick Saban about a year or two ago. That was really interesting. And I don't know that, I'm sure Nick Saban is smart enough to know this could get out. So he didn't say anything, any kind of profanity or say anything, but he was really more upfront than he's ever been about almost stating other schools out there, and they can't promise you this. They haven't delivered this. We've delivered this. We're the only one that's done this. We're the only one that's going to prepare you for this. It's just us and nobody else.
Yeah, and see, you don't know that because, I mean, not only if you have everybody on one team, not only can you have trouble competing for the job, but there's nobody on the other side that's quality for you to compete against. So, I mean, if you go out there and you beat a bunch of 2-stars, it really doesn't, show proper highlights of how good you really are. I mean, unless you are just making them look like a local high school team. I mean, I that's why I think there's more parity now, and I like it like that, because now, if you go to Alabama and oops, you're 7th on the depth chart, go play for an Iowa, go play for a Syracuse or go play for a Washington State where you're going to be on the field. And if enough people do that, then you're just going to take that talent, you're going to spread it apart to where you're going to have, I mean, there's going to be, big dogs everywhere, but at least you're going to go up against other quality talent, and you're going to have everybody be able to have a tape to put on where you can go to the NFL scouts and say, this is what I can do, instead of just riding bench because I chose poorly for a school.
Well, one way to measure that would be to look at the current list of the schools that have produced the most NFL players, and then compare that to 20 years ago or 30 years ago. I don't think it's much different.
I think Michigan's fallen off a little bit. I think we're still I think 6th. I think last I checked,
teams have increased or decreased their level, but I mean the disparity in 1, 2, 3. It's not like 30 years ago there were just, you had a team with 40 and a team with 38 and 37, and it was so distributed so equally. And now all of a sudden there's just 1 or 2 schools that dominate. I think the disparity in NFL talent is pretty close to what it's always been.
Yeah, I don't think it's split that much, except for the fact that it's become a lot more concentrated in one specific conference. And don't make me say it because it's just gonna put me.
I'll say it for you.
Say it.
Yeah. So there's for every 5 SEC players in the NFL, there's like 3 Big Ten players, and there's like 2.5 ACC players. Yeah, the SEC right now is like 350-ish NFL players, and the Big Ten is like 260-ish, and then it goes down from there.
Yeah, maybe I'm biased because I grew up in the Midwest, but I've always thought that if you really want to be able to showcase what you can do at the NFL level, go to the Big Ten. Go to where you're going to have to play outside. You're going to have to play in elements.
I knew you were going to say that.
Well, I mean that's the big. I mean, Dan Marino. I mean, I think the Miami Sun made him soft because every time he had to go up to the Meadowlands or up to
Buffalo.
Buffalo was probably his worst one.
Yes.
But I mean, that was back when the Bills were legit back in the Jim Kelly days. But I mean, he couldn't win in Buffalo to save his life, which I never understood because he played at Pittsburgh. It does get cold in Pittsburgh. But I think, the 4 years of Miami just ruined him. Or
so the
20 years of ruined him.
Exactly. So the reverse might have been Brett Favre, who you would think, how could this guy become one of the great cold weather quarterbacks of all time? He grew up down on the coast in Mississippi.
Yeah, I've been to Hattiesburg. It don't get too cold down there.
No.
I guess he just got acclimated.
Yeah.
I think Lambeau is just. I mean, I hate to say this as a Lions fan growing up, but Lambeau is just a special place. It's weird and it's majestic. I just something about that place.
Your guy Tom Brady is a California kid.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that he went to Michigan because Michigan was actually the only D1 school to offer him a scholarship.
Yeah. Well, I'm just making the point about him being able to acclimate to weather. Yeah. And then he becomes one of the great cold weather quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah. I mean, thank God he went to Michigan to get, the cold weather training because Foxborough can get pretty nippy. Oh, and I will mention, they're talking about decommits. Was Ryan Williams, the 5-star wide receiver? He actually decommitted after the Saban. I'm not sure if that was mentioned or not.
Yes.
And I'm also kind of waiting to see who else is going to be decommitting because, I mean, I think there's, the bulk of that team, they don't necessarily want to play for Alabama. They want to play for Saban.
Yeah, I agree. Like I told somebody else, I just see it as before that was an advantage that Alabama had over everyone else, that if all things were equal, there was this star in a lot of players' eyes that I want to play for Saban. Now it's sure Alabama's right there, but they're just another, depending on who they hire, another LSU, another Clemson, another fill in the blank. And there's still a great football power, but Saban's not there.
Yeah, and I kind of want to see who they bring in. But I mean, some of the names they're throwing out are just stupid. I mean, first of all, anybody saying Mike Vrabel, I would probably lay even money on Pratt. I'd probably give odds. Vrabel's going to be taking over Belichick's spot when Bob Kraft nudges him out the back door. That's safe money.
Yeah, that's a good selection on your part. I completely agree with that.
So I don't think Sark and Smart are going anywhere. I really doubt Smart. I know for a fact Kirby Smart. I mean, Kirby Smart, he's won 2 of the last 3 national championships at his alma mater. What makes you think he would leave that?
Yeah, I don't get that either. What is better, and the experience, for a coach to go back to his alma mater and be a national champion?
Yeah. And honestly, I think that's the reason why the people dismissing Dabo, they might want to hold up on that because, Clemson's not the hot ticket it once was.
Yeah.
Dabo has Alabama roots. I could see that happening.
Yeah, until Dabo proves otherwise, and he's done a great job there, but until he proves otherwise, he needs Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence to be the quarterback to be an elite team.
But he can do that. I mean, if you can recruit in Clemson, South Carolina,
Exactly.
you can recruit in Tuscaloosa.
That's why I'm saying that would be his incentive, or one of them, to go to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, and I figured my short list is probably 3 names. I figured him, Lane, and Lanning, all who have ties to Alabama.
Yes, not Mike Norvell.
No, I don't. I guess I'm just not sold on Norvell yet because I've seen him. Now I know this year, he kind of broke out, but I've seen him struggle before. Plus, the ACC was really, really down this year. So, I mean, you can't really gauge how much he's brought Florida State back because, I mean, granted, they went 13-0, but I can honestly name a dozen teams that probably could have gone 13-0 with that schedule. I mean, you consider the fact that there were most people, and I think most, college football analysts saying that any team in the top 10 on a neutral field, Florida State would be the underdog against everybody in the top 10.
Okay. Well, I get your point, but I'm also going to fight back a little bit because that's what I do. They did beat LSU by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. Now, LSU going into the Bowls was what? Was they like 13, 14 or something?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I put them as favorite over LSU. And honestly, I think that'd be a closer one this time. But
Yeah,
I mean,
I would agree.
But I mean, FSU, I mean, well, you obviously saw what happened against Georgia, but any team that made the playoffs, FSU probably would have got dogged. I mean, Ohio State would have beat them comfortably. Even Missouri probably beats them by a couple touchdowns. I mean, it's speculation, but let's be fair. Who in the top 10 on a neutral site against FSU would you take FSU against?
Well, I've got Jordan Travis. I've got a complete team, right?
You've got Rodemaker.
No, I don't want Rodemaker. No, with Rodemaker, yes. Then I agree with your points. Yes, you're right.
You can't control injuries, Mark.
But if I get Jordan Travis back, if I've got the complete Florida State team, then I think they're competitive with all sorts of teams.
I think that they're not competitive with the 4 that made it, or Georgia, or Ohio State, or Ole Miss. Anybody else other than that, I could see a game.
Okay.
But I mean, I think, I'm kind of wondering if Dan Lanning can be pulled out of Eugene because, I mean, I think a lot of people don't think of Oregon as a plum job, but, with Nike money up there, there's ability to recruit in the Pacific Northwest and Northern California. I think the Oregon job is fine.
Well, I do think that whoever takes this job is going to have to consider, wow, what is expected of me? And what kind of pressure am I getting into? There's a lot of pressure at all these jobs, but there's a difference in pressure at Oregon versus Alabama. If Dan Lanning does nothing but go 10-2, 10-2, 9-3, 10-2 for the next 10 years, he's going to keep his job. Now, though, there will be some Oregon fans that will be disgruntled and say, hey, isn't this guy going to win a national championship or get deep into the playoffs? But he'll still keep his job. They're not going to fire him.
It seems like Oregon, they're on the cusp and they're good enough some of these years where I could see them making that final step. I mean, I thought that Oregon was probably going to sneak in the playoffs this year towards beginning of November. I thought they might get in. I mean, if they beat Washington, I mean, who would you take? A 12-1 Oregon that won the Pac, or the 13-0 Florida State?
I think that would have been a tougher call for the committee, but I think Oregon would have made it because, again, the committee was going to rely on the injury to be their crutch.
Yeah, I definitely agree with it being closer because I knew that, I still say that the committee would have just gotten raked over the coals by a certain section of the country if an SEC team didn't get in there. But if Washington get in there, then Michigan, Texas, and Alabama are the three locks, and then that last spot is Oregon or Florida State. And I don't think anybody's saying, okay, if we have a playoff without a Pac team or a playoff without an ACC team, no big deal. I mean, because we've had times where the Pac gets left out and no problem. Like last year, whenever USC should have made it, but they kind of wet the bed against Utah, and then that got. Nobody really said, well, USC really belonged there. It's not a true playoff without a USC.
All right, Mike. Anything else?
Oh, I do have a question for you. When you were over there with the Miami guys, were any of them asking Mario Cristobal to go up there to Tuscaloosa to take that job?
No, the Miami guy that we have is critical of Mario, but he's still a Mario guy.
Really?
Yes.
Well, they're just going to die on that hill, aren't they?
He's only been there for 2 years.
Do you see any, visuals of improvement?
Not much. And if there is, it's only because they were just so incredibly bad last year.
Now they are recruiting a little bit better. I mean,
they're recruiting really well.
Cristobal always recruits. The question is, can he do anything with those recruits?
It's kind of similar to Billy Napier at Florida. He might be out of a job if he didn't have a top 10 recruiting class.
Now, didn't a few guys decommit from that top 5 Florida class?
Yes, and that's why I said a top 10 class, because it looked like it was going to be a top 4 or 5 class before signing day, but he lost some guys.
Yeah.
Napier.
Yeah.
But Cristobal brought in a great class. Yep. And Ohio State, I just say this to make me feel better, I guess. And I also say this, that this is a consolation prize. This is all those loser excuses, and not excuses, but kind of Band-Aids to make you feel better. But after Michigan did what it did to Washington and beat Bama, guess that makes Ohio State look even better. Ohio State played Michigan that well in Ann Arbor, and then that Michigan team went on and did what they did to show that they were the best team in the country.
Yeah. And I just got frustrated by people just kind of dismissing Michigan by saying, oh, this is the worst Alabama since 2007. I'm like, stop it.
Well, I said the same thing, but that doesn't take away from, you understand that that's a valid argument. It's not an argument tearing down Michigan. It's just a honest evaluation of Alabama's teams. If you go year to, it's more of a credit to Bama and Saban to say, this is crazy that this could be your worst team since 07 or 08, and they made the college football playoff.
So worse than last year, worse than 2010.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So Alabama has been so dominant that the worst team in 15 years beat a back-to-back defending national champion. Make it make sense, Mark.
No. Okay. I look at it this way. We know what happened against Auburn. We know how ugly that game was, that they lucked out. And they've had those games before, but just follow my line of thinking. So we know how bad that Auburn game was. We know how bad that Arkansas game was. We know how bad the South Florida game was, et cetera, et cetera. We also know, look at this quarterback. Well, look at the last 3 quarterbacks. Tua, Mac Jones, Bryce Young. He doesn't come close to those 3 guys. So you're going all the way back to 2015, Jay Coker, to start to make comparisons at quarterback. The recruiting we know has been insane, great, wide receiver, running back, but the guys just have not emerged. Like there's no, again, just go year to year to year through the Trent Richardsons, the Derrick Henrys, the TJ Yeldons, the Najee Harrises, the Jahmyr Gibbs. Every year, they didn't have that guy this year. Wide receiver, the same thing. Even the team that beat you, that missed the playoffs in 2019, that played in the Citrus Bowl, that was one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the country, even though they lost 2 games. And one of those losses was by 5 points to the Joe Burrow team.
Yeah.
And the other one was because Mac Jones threw 2 pick sixes and they clanked a field goal off the upright and lost at Auburn 48-45. That team had Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle, Najee Harris. Like they were like all the bad Alabama teams were just tripped up and still had ungodly talent that was better than this team. That's why I make that statement.
Well, I mean, now can we revisit this? If we go on, 3 or 4 years now, and all of a sudden, Jace
Yeah.
McClellan's a 1,500-yard rusher in the NFL,
Yep.
and Jermaine Burton's,
Absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely. We can revisit it. And also understand that while I'm dissing this Alabama team, I'm also stating that they're still one of the 5 best teams in the country.
yeah. And keep in mind, for all the talk about Jalen Milroe, wasn't he like 6th in QBR this year? I know he
Yeah,
was
he
top
might have
10.
been. Yeah.
So, I mean, it just seems like, all of a sudden, we're discounting Bama instead of propping up Michigan, because all I'm hearing going into these 2 games was, oh, Bama's going to beat you. Bama's the best team. Bama. Then all of a sudden, Michigan beats Bama, and this is the
Okay.
worst team they've had in 15 years.
At
Then
least-
next week it was Penix. Oh, you've never seen offense like Penix is going to light you up for 400 yards. Joe Moore award winning. They could protect him. You guys can't. You can't tackle him. You can't pressure him. Can't touch him. He's going to torch you guys. And he goes out there and he looks terrible. I mean, they score 13 points, but now it's now all these other excuses and stuff like that, and it's never, wow, Michigan might have just been the best team in the country at number 1.
Fair. That's all fair. But as it applies to me and my analysis, at least give me this, Mike. For all the times that I'm wrong, and I'm wrong plenty of times, I'm at least consistent. So when Alabama looked awful against Texas, then awful against South Florida, I would love to. I may go back and watch the live stream of the night that they played South Florida. And everybody was like, oh, they're terrible. Look, it was 3-3 in the fourth quarter.
Well,
Because
no.
I sat here and still said, calm down, everyone. Nick Saban will figure it out. They're going to stay with Jalen Milroe, and they're going to figure out a way to use what he does best. They'll eliminate the stuff that he can't do, and they will be in the SEC championship game. And I believe they'll still be in the national championship game. That's what I said. So at least I was consistent and didn't fly off the handle because they had a 3-3 game in the fourth quarter against South Florida. And similarly, even though I was still predicting Alabama to go as far or further than they did, I also was consistent saying all year, this is possibly the worst Alabama. Like, I can pull videos and live streams from September and October where I was saying this is probably the worst Alabama team since like 07, 08. So I was consistent at least.
Okay. But I mean,
In saying all that, Mike, I'm not taking away from Michigan's championship. Michigan is the best team in the country.
Well, I mean, not so much you, but to hear some of the people, they think, we just got lucky or something. Because I mean, this is the same, same Washington team that scored 13 and scored 37 against Texas, who, by the way, Texas isn't a bad defense. I mean, I think Devontae Sweat might be the best defensive player in college football.
Yeah. When you and I say Texas is bad on defense, that's like me saying Alabama's got a bad team this year. That's against all their talent. It's a very talented defense. They're just didn't put the pieces together and didn't develop and mature the way that they should. But Texas is loaded with defensive talent. It's like when Ohio State has a bad defense. You're like, well, why? They should be better.
Yeah, and for a bad Ohio State defense is like 30th.
Yeah.
They're not like 80th, 90th or anything like that. No. And it just frustrates me because I'm seeing all the blowback from these people. It's like, you know what? I mean, when Ohio State won, I gave them credit. They won national championship. I mean, especially doing it, with a third string quarterback. Props to them. They beat the stuffing out of Wisconsin to get in there, made the run. Congratulations, you won. Not a fan of Ohio State, but at least I can recognize it. I didn't make bull crap excuses.
Yes, you are completely right. People may not like it that Michigan won or whatever, but nobody should say anything. There is no way to detract from this championship. There just should be no way for anyone to poke holes in it or anything.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that Charlie coming out and saying this is a fair and square win. That should silence all the critics. I know it won't, but it is.
I'll even say this, Mike. I'll even say this, and you're right about that. And I may look through that and knock out a video or something because that's substantial. That's really important. I'll even say this, that what I said after the Ohio State-Michigan game. And again, I wanted to be understood that Michigan won the game fair and square. They were the better team on the field. They're the champion. They should advance. All of that. I'm not saying that refs did nothing like that. But I still came away with that, as you well know, if you remember, it said, I still kind of think Ohio State's a little bit better than Michigan.
Of course you did.
Well, I'm just being honest because that's what I said. Because I was trying to take my bias out of it. But I will say, with each game, you can reevaluate. And I will say, after watching Michigan play these two games against Alabama and Washington, they're better than Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State's better on offense than us.
I don't know about that.
I don't think it's by a great margin.
I think Michigan's better on both sides of the ball by not much. Because I think Ohio State is an excellent defense.
I will say this. I all the picking I did on Jim Knowles last season, I have to walk a little bit back. Because I was on record.
Yeah, rightfully so. You picked on him. So did I.
I mean, I thought that hiring a nickel DC out of the Big 12 was going to be a massive mistake for an Ohio State.
But at least understand this, Mike. Similar to what did I believe you did, and other Michigan fans say after the TCU game?
Better team didn't win.
Yeah. So why can't I have that right after a one-score McCord makes two long completions, you're down to the 35-yard line, and if you score, you win 31-30. Why can't I say on the road, why can't I make that claim when my team's 11-0 taking on an 11-0 Michigan team that I still think my team's a little bit better?
Okay, I tell you what. If we had lost to Alabama, I probably wouldn't push back so hard on that.
No, I was saying that after the game. And before you played Alabama.
Okay.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I thought Michigan was a better team after that. But, yeah, I mean, I can understand why some Ohio State guys would say, yeah, we're the better team. Because, I mean, a lot of the big names were on Ohio State. I mean, everybody was just Marvin Harrison is just the greatest wide receiver in the history of the game. Best wide receiver core in the country. This was back when Washington was kind of a little under the radar. Their defense had improved, from the previous year. I mean, I would have disagreed with you, but I wouldn't have said, this, it's not a discussion.
Oh, no, that was going to be my next point. If you remember, Mike, I said clearly, I'm not stating this as some kind of fact or that this is not debatable. I'm saying that the Michigan person has all the evidence on their side. They just won the game fair and square. I'm the one who's got the uphill argument, but I still believe that you can make an argument that Ohio State's a little bit better, but I'm not by any means saying I'm right and there's no way to debate it or anything like that. No.
Yeah, okay. I'm with you on that one then.
I'll say it this way. Now that we've seen everybody play all these games, I still would love to see Georgia and Michigan play, but that's what it is.
Well, I mean, can we go transitive property here? I mean, this, Alabama, they beat them worse than the score indicates.
Yes, you're right. They did.
I mean, they were thoroughly beaten. It might have been a 3-point win.
They controlled the game. Yep.
And then Michigan beat Alabama. Now it was a touchdown in overtime, and Alabama did have some big mistakes. But, I tend to go the transitive property here. Same way with, if like Texas fans wanted to argue that, we could beat Michigan too, I'd go transitive property on them too. With Washington being B instead of Alabama. Yeah. I mean, that's why I really
transitive property guy. I'm more of a resume guy. If you can give me like 7 of those, then I'm like, okay, I get it. but just one little to connect the dots.
But honestly, I mean, Georgia, the only really impressive win I would say was Ole Miss.
Sure.
I mean,
No,
they beat a Missouri team by one score that I thought was a little bit overrated. Now, I
Yeah.
don't think quite so much after what they did to Ohio State in the bowl game, but I think Missouri was kind of a little on the hype side. Now, blowing out Ole Miss was definitely impressive.
Yeah,
But-
understand what I'm saying about the Georgia thing. I'm not saying that because, oh, Georgia would prove that they're better. No, I'm just saying if there's another game I would like to see and would like to have seen played this year, that would be the game.
I'd like to see it too. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm confident enough in this Michigan team that I would like to see them go up against any team you want to put on there. You know, whether it be in Alabama, Texas, Washington, Georgia. That's pretty much it. I don't think any other teams can really have a conversation about it.
I'll put it this way. This is who I believe are the best teams in the country this year. I think Michigan is number 1. I think Georgia is number 2. And I think I would have to sit here for a long time and figure out Alabama, Washington, Texas, Ohio State. Who'd I miss? Maybe Oregon.
Oregon, yeah.
That I just think they're all so incredibly close. Who knows?
Well, I mean, and this was kind of a bad year for it because, you know, this year, if you didn't win your conference championship, you had no chance because every conference championship was either undefeated or had one loss. And the fact that there were 3 conference champions that were undefeated, that just kind of muddied the water. Whereas last year, you know, you had a Pac-12 championship that had 2 losses, so you could keep them out. And that's the reason why Ohio State snuck in, because even at 11-1, they were still good enough, at least record wise and eye test wise, to sneak into the 4th spot.
Yeah, it's almost crazy when you consider Ohio State, I think, was a better team this year than they were last year. And they certainly had better credentials because they went on the road and beat Notre Dame instead of beating them at home. And Notre Dame was a little bit better this year than they were the year before. And instead of getting blown out against Michigan, they played it down to the wire. And they're both 11-1 teams, but the team that had worse credentials got into the playoffs just because it's a different scenario.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't have conferences that just really fell off. Like
Yep.
the Pac-12 and the Big 12 last year.
Yep. All right, Mike, I better keep moving here.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me though, Mark.
Everybody, check out Mike's shirt before we let him go here. I appreciate that, Mike. Thanks for repping. Have a good one.
You too.
Mike's a great college football fan, and he is reveling in the Michigan victory, which he should be. Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, and this is a credit to Nick Saban, unless you are a fan of this team. And believe me, this kind of hurts me to say this as an Ohio State fan because I take a little bit of pride, even though I try to be extremely neutral here and unbiased, that I want to think of my team, my program as being the greatest of all time and the greatest now. But unless you're Alabama, winning a national title is like a rare thing. All right. Next up, we've got Manny. Manny, what's going on tonight? Sorry for the wait. Hello, Manny.
Sorry, I was on mute. I hope you can hear me now.
No. Don't worry about it. I know that we kept you waiting a long time. Good to have you here. How you doing?
Hey, yeah, I've just been great. Hope you are as well. Just been enjoying the conversation. And you were discussing the Norvell, Lanning, Dabo. Who else do we got in there in that top 4?
Dabo, Lanning, Norvell. If you want to throw in Sark, Kirby Smart, Lane Kiffin.
Kiffin. There's no way they get Kiffin, though.
I don't think so either.
I think out of respect Saban fired him on the night of the national championship. Do you think? I mean, do you really think that Saban wants to leave his program, which is his baby, to someone that he dislikes and
I
has
don't think so.
ongoing beef?
Wait a minute. Hang on. I don't
Uh-huh.
know if that's correct. I don't know if they're just playing nice in the sandbox as ordered by Greg Sankey, but if you listen to Lane Kiffin and Nick Saban talk about each other, it's
Mhm.
always in the highest regard. Both of them.
Well, Saban accused Kiffin of potentially having stole plays. Remember when they played in 2020? He said
Yes.
that Kiffin, yeah, they don't like each other. I mean, he fired you. He fired Kiffin. Like, you
I
know,
understand that, but I know every year at the SEC media days that Nick Saban has had great things to say about Lane Kiffin and how smart he is, and that he credits him with transforming their offense and bringing it up to date and allowing them to do so many great NFL concepts and to keep them relevant. And Kiffin has talked about Saban and that he's just obviously the greatest, number one. Number two, that he got to work for him and he learned so much from him and he's matured because of him. They say, I'm not saying that you're wrong or you're not bringing up valid points, and that also hasn't been stated, but those guys say nice things about each other all the time. And it's not generic. Like, coaches say nice things about each other all the time because they're pressed to and they're asked. And sometimes it's just very vanilla. Yeah, so and so runs a great program. He does a nice job or whatever. No, they're very detailed and specific.
how much say do you think Saban's gonna have on his successor?
Well, I think that I'll put it this way, that the Alabama administration would be foolish not to listen to what he has to say and take it very much into account. Who better to not just name a successor, but more so look at other coaches and the work that they've done and not value their opinion on who can take over and keep that program at the same level?
Well, one thing that I don't know, obviously none of us know, but let's say it's Nick Saban gives you a call and you're either Dan Lanning or Norvell, and he calls you and says, I'm retiring, and I believe you would be the best. This program would be in the best hands with you being the head coach. I think if Nick Saban makes that call and you're, like Dan Lanning, does that sway you to leave? Like a Oregon or a Florida State or a Texas, if you're Stark?
It doesn't sway me, and that doesn't in any way reflect my respect or lack thereof of Nick Saban. I have all sorts of respect for him, and I'm sure I would have even more if I was a coach and did the same thing that he does. But I can't make a decision that determines my career, my future, my family, where we live, where they go to school, all that stuff based on somebody trying to not artificially, but butter me up and pull me to this job. No, I got to discount that, appreciate the words, appreciate the confirmation, but separate that and then make my own decision.
Yeah,
That's me.
we're two different people, Mark. I'd be crying, and there'd be snot coming out of my nose, and going, "Oh, you're the goat!" Of course,
Oh, that could be part of it. I've got a heart. I've got emotions. Yes, that could be part of the conversation, but I'd pull myself away from that and be like, no, this is about career. This is about money. This is about wife and kids and all that. And yeah,
And lastly, would you be shocked if they chose anyone outside of those four?
it's funny because before I answered that, it reminded me of a summer afternoon outside of a TV station, and I was leaving and had a couple people say, can you please stay for another 2 weeks because we need this? And if it did, and I said, no, sorry, bye. Because what was more important was my wife and my kids and our moving plans and our destination. So anyway,
Of course. Yeah. But this is on the other. You were leaving there. This is somewhere like, let's
yeah,
say,
true.
ESPN called you, McAfee called, or whoever the biggest person in the, and said, "Hey, listen, you know what? I'm leaving the show to you, Mark Rogers. I think you're the, can take over my spot, right?"
That would be a slightly stark contrast.
Yeah. So if it's outside of those four, are you going to be floored? Like, if this is my pick, and I like all four, and I think it's going to be Dan Lanning or Stark.
Well,
But
I
if
gotta say, Manny, that it's run through my mind during these series of phone calls and conversations that, wow, we're just focused on these like four guys.
yeah,
And I don't necessarily have any other great. We could all surf the internet, and I'm sure many people have surfed online and come up with. I'm sure there are all sorts of sites that are spewing out lists of names. So there have to be some other people that could be under consideration, but who would they be? My goodness. Um,
the
so
only person I'm thinking of, and this is my number one choice, is
okay.
Urban
Oh.
Meyer. Urban Meyer, a proven winner, a champion, a recruiting monster. The proven winner in two different places. Well,
Sure.
everywhere he's
Well,
gone,
more than
actually.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you realize the first thing that you stated when you got on this call?
Oh,
The
about
first
the
thing that you talked
Saban
about was
calling
how
up and
much Lane Kiffin and Nick Saban, or more in particular, Nick Saban does not care for Lane Kiffin. Do you think Nick
yes.
Saban cares for Urban Meyer?
I don't think he cares for Urban Meyer, but I think he if I was if I was Saban and I had a choice, Urban Meyer was a disciplinarian. He's tough. I think Saban hated Lane Kiffin because he was always late. Apparently, that's Kiffin liked to leave early and arrive late. So whoever is going to be the next coach of Alabama, I think Saban prefers a person that isn't late and arrives. And I think Urban's got that temperament. He's a winner. He's a winner. Why
Well,
not
of
leave
course
him
he
a
is.
winner? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, of course he's a winner, and Nick Saban knows that as well as anyone because he's got a losing record against Urban Meyer. Um, yeah, I don't think Nick Saban likes Urban Meyer, and maybe
Yeah,
that
he
would be the
doesn't.
Alabama administration, saying, "With all due respect, Coach, we want to adhere to your wishes, but we're hiring Urban Meyer because he's the most proven winner out there." But I don't know if the Alabama administration is too keen, and I am speaking way out of line here because I don't know any of these people about Urban Meyer's past. Also, Urban Meyer has yet to coach in this NIL transfer portal era, which I'm sure he can navigate that. Um, the only nice thing I've heard Nick Saban say about Urban Meyer, again, he's said all the generic things like, yeah, he's obviously a great coach. And anytime that they've had a news conference before they've played in a big matchup, Nick Saban said all the obvious things. But there was a situation where Nick Saban had, oh shoot, he had a opening I think when he first took the job at Toledo as head coach, and Urban Meyer was trying to get on his staff, and Urban Meyer talked to Nick Saban's wife, Miss Terry, and she was very impressed with him. And Nick Saban said, "I didn't call him back," and he said, "I should have. I regret that I didn't. I made a stupid mistake, but I was already locked in on who I was going to hire, and I should have hired him."
Yeah, I believe I've heard that story as well. Hey, this could be the writing that wrong right there. That's an excellent thing. Hey, I didn't choose him at Toledo, but I chose him for Bama.
Well, I have also said when some of these jobs pop open, like Michigan State and others that people have rumored Urban Meyer to be interested in, I've thought he's not going to Michigan State. Are you kidding me? No, he look at what he's accomplished. He is not going anywhere unless he is just really starved to get back into coaching 10 years from now and he just wants to kind of ride off into the sunset doing it kind of an easy job and he takes a I don't even know where he would coach, Georgia Tech or somewhere. I don't know. Anyway, what was I getting to here? Shoot. Oh, yeah, he knows his legacy, he knows his record, all that. He's only taking a job where he can win a national championship, where he
Yeah.
has those kind of resources.
Yeah, and I think those are the only jobs for him. I mean, why would he want to like you mentioned, Michigan State or something like that? What about Jim Harbaugh? He hasn't been he's talking about leaving Michigan. Everyone thinks he's leaving. Why not? And other
Why
obsessed
not?
with discipline.
He's gonna leave his alma mater to go to
Sure.
Alabama?
Well, didn't they? Well, he's not very happy with the Big Ten.
He's not happy with the Big Ten, and you know what? The politics at his school, from a social standpoint, do not match his beliefs. He would be much
Mhm.
more, even though he's a northern guy and he's never coached in the South, never lived in the South, to my recollection. But Brian Kelly's doing the same thing.
Mhm.
And shoot, Dan Mullins from New Hampshire, he coached at the University of Florida. So I think we sometimes compartmentalize these guys a little bit too much. Actually, the values of that state and that university fall much more in line with Jim Harbaugh's beliefs and values than Michigan. So that's
And
actually
I mean, Harbaugh is known for being an insane disciplinarian, like such as Saban is. I like it. The more I think about it, the more I like it.
wow.
And then of course the curveball, Mike Brable. Any
I thought you
chance
already
that you
threw the
see it?
curveballs at us.
Well, yeah. Well, there goes another one. This one's got what's that? Stuff they put on the baseballs? Tar or whatever.
Yes.
Remember the old school? Yeah.
Yes.
Here's that one, Vrabel. Any chance that that's even because I keep he's going to be named for every single job that comes out, Mike Vrabel, until he takes the New England job if Belichick is indeed canned. But I do believe Belichick's. It's more and more sounds like they're going to keep him one more year.
We talked about Vrabel on the Ohio State show today because there was a theory thrown out there by our buddy Matt Zemek on our USC show that maybe Ryan Day is going to be targeted toward one of these NFL jobs and that Ohio State would be after Mike Vrabel. But he apparently hates recruiting.
Oh, really?
Apparently.
I would. He seems like a real players guy,
Oh, he is a player's coach. Yes,
Yeah.
he is.
I think he'd be unnatural at recruiting. Unnatural.
Yeah.
That's surprising to hear. And that who someone threw this out there, and it was even I think Pete Carroll. He's Saban's age,
Yeah.
72. If
Those,
he was
those
10 years younger,
yeah. Yep.
sure. But at
Absolutely.
72, him or Mac Brown, I mean,
Well,
how
Mac
much more do
Brown's
they
not
have?
in Pete Carroll's league, but sorry, Mac. You're a great coach, but Pete Carroll, wow. He's a great all-time coach, but like you say, he's the same age. No.
Yeah. And then lastly, and I'll let you go. The most hyped 4-8 coach of all time.
Oh, well. Yeah. Well, again, he and Saban have worked together on those Aflac commercials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He can recruit.
Yep.
That's what he can recruit, and he's pretty good with the portal. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't. I wouldn't like the hire. I think it'd be a ridiculous hire, but if it does happen, that's going to tell us exactly where college football is going.
Yes, it will. And it will tell us that some of these staunch universities aren't quite as staunch as they used to be, that they're more about the almighty dollar and not so much about do we present ourselves in a professional, not, and I'm not knocking Dion completely, I am slightly, but that you think of a place like the University of Alabama as wanting a certain decorum, a certain style, a certain look and approach to that position. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think Lane Kiffin would be a selection.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that kind of rules out Kiffin, probably Meyer. Um, we'll see. Hey, this guy, this caller said tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, Meyer conducts himself fine in public. Like in
Well,
terms of meaning,
not necessarily.
well, I don't mean in public out there, knocking down a
Look,
few. I'm
he was,
talking
yeah,
about, in front of the media and in news conferences, he doesn't say anything controversial and he knows how to handle. Obviously, he does a great job on Fox. He knows how to
yeah,
speak. And he's not going to say anything stupid.
yeah.
All right, man.
And well, he never really cleared the air on who that lady was at the bar.
No, was he asked to do that?
No, but I think he could have said something. It's, hey, it was a friend or something.
No,
He had
no.
his hand
That
on
would be a
her.
ridiculous thing to say. All right, man. Appreciate you being here.
All right. Have a good one. Take care,
You
Mark.
too.
Bye.
All right. We are pushing 3 hours. Let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Jackson, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Mark. How you doing
I'm
tonight?
doing just fine. Thank you for keeping me straight on the SEC format and alignment, because I knew for as much as we've covered that here and gone through the schedules and everything that I would have had it stuck in my head that something had been, that there had been a change in divisions. So no divisions, line them all up 1 through 16.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun seeing what the schedule setup is like. I mean, I know a few teams are pretty happy with the Saban retirement. I got a feeling Hugh Freeze and Auburn's one of them. Ole Miss is definitely happy, but I don't know how happy they will be for long because we don't know whether Lane Kiffin is going to try his luck in Tuscaloosa, if he's going to try to get Ole Miss their first SEC title since 1962. But I mean, then again, he did replace a legend in Pete Carroll at USC, so I do have a feeling that will likely happen, but we don't know yet.
Yeah, I don't think Lane Kiffin's going to be offered the job myself.
Yeah, it's. I am wondering about that announcement though. It's going to be interesting to see who's the next man up. But I mean, it's a tough job. It's going to be really tough. Replacing the man himself. You don't want to be the guy replacing the big man. You want to be the guy that replaces the guy who's replacing the big man. You want to be that guy afterwards. I mean, it's pretty big. It was kind of like the 80s when Ray Perkins replaced Bear Bryant. That was pretty big right there.
Sure. Well, if we would go through all the legendary coaches in college football, you would have some mixed results in regards to who replaced them. Jimbo
Yeah.
Fisher, Bobby Bowden, that worked out pretty well. He obviously
True.
didn't have the career that Bobby Bowden did, but no one will. So, but that worked out well. He won a national championship. They were the best team in the ACC for most of that time. And if we just went Don James, Bo Schembechler, Woody Hayes, we went through everyone, we would see pretty mixed results. So I agree with you that whoever takes over this job needs to understand, wow, these are big shoes to fill, and a lot's expected of me to keep up this standard. And the other difference is, as you well know, Nick Saban is leaving on top. That rarely happens. Urban Meyer left on top, but he wasn't there for as long as Nick Saban. Bob Stoops generally left on top. And when I say on top, that doesn't mean national champion. That means you're just on top of your game. You're near the top of the sport. Pete Carroll, the same thing. They just had the one down season after '08. So that's a more difficult position to come in as the successor than it is. Bobby Bowden had some tail off years, some 8-5 kind of seasons. Joe Paterno, obviously, completely different deal, scandal. So they're just looking for somebody to save the program at that point. And Bill O'Brien, forget the records. He did a great job and is revered at Penn State, or should be, because he did a great job considering the circumstances. So, yeah, you're right. It's a huge burden for somebody to take on.
I know I wouldn't want to be the guy, but I mean, I am wondering what Nick Saban's going to do now. I mean, I don't know if he's going to be on the Pat McAfee show tomorrow because like the regular season's over with. Because
Yeah.
I know he's been doing Nick Saban Thursdays on Pat McAfee for the regular season. I don't know if he's going to be on there tomorrow to go more into as to why he said, I'm retiring. But I guess we're going to wait and see. But it would be pretty fun if he decides he's going to try to go on like Joe Rogan or something like that. Just kind of like, oh yeah, Nick Saban, that's awesome. Jamie, can you pull that up? Jamie, that'd be pretty cool. That'd be a fun episode.
Yeah, it would be. If I'm Nick Saban, I would love to do some TV, but I would not want some kind of regular TV gig, even though it's a minuscule percentage of the work that he's currently doing. I wouldn't want some regular job. I'll appear on some show once a week, something like that. Myself, I'm just speaking for myself. I don't know what he wants.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he wants to be at home all the time because I
No.
mean, he's
No.
not going to like it very long. I mean,
No.
he's gonna
These
hate it.
people that think that somebody can work that hard and be that much of a driver and an alpha dog and then just shut it down and just lay on the beach and kick it up and think that would be great. No, those type people don't want that. You get a little bit more of that. That's nice. Yeah, you don't have to work 90 hours a week all the time, but they still want to be productive and work on things and own a business or do something.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's gonna be very interesting to see what happens. We don't know what's gonna happen, but
And actually, one of the greats that you brought up, Bear Bryant, that's one of the big reasons I believe personally that after he coached his last game, he died within 3 or 4 months.
yeah, it was like a few weeks after the
Yeah.
Liberty Bowl, and
Yeah.
it was just like, holy cow. January 26th is not a good day for sports fans. That's for sure. It's like a spooky day.
Why? What else happened on January 26th?
Well, I know like Bear Bryant passed away that day. Kobe passed away that day. And it's just like, good grief. All kinds of people are dying on that day. Ugh. Oh, man.
All right, Jackson.
But
Anything else, sir?
that's about all. I just wanted to go over my reaction a little bit on the Nick Saban retirement. And it's going to be interesting to see what the future holds for everybody. And I know George is pretty happy because I've got a pretty good feeling they're going to be dominating the SEC for years and years to come with Kirby Smart as head coach. Because, I mean, he's learned quite a lot from Coach Saban.
All right, Jackson. Appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you for having me on, Mark.
All right. 3 calls. Let's get to them. We've got Nick on the line. Hey, Nick.
Hey, Mark. How's it going?
I am doing just fine. Appreciate you being here. Thank you for your contributions tonight. Hello, Nick. Nick, are you with us? Okay, Nick, we're going to put you backstage and we will try you after the next caller unless you are there. Okay. Then we're going to go to Golden Playbook.
How's it going?
I am doing just fine. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Good to have you here.
Yeah. So I don't know if you heard, but so the candidates obviously for the Alabama job, I don't know if you heard this or not, but it's probably not true. But I heard that Marcus Freeman is a candidate,
Oh, okay.
supposedly. But do I think he's gonna go there? I mean, no, because he hasn't really proven anything at Notre Dame yet.
Well, do you mind telling us who is stating this?
I saw that on the Notre Dame Facebook page and Notre Dame Nation.
Yeah, but it was just some random person made a post and said Marcus Freeman's in the running for the Bama job.
That's what they said.
Okay, well that's
But
what I'm
I don't think
stating.
it's true.
Yeah, this is my point. When you said that there are sources out there, those aren't sources. Those are just people talking. Anybody can post
Yeah.
anything they want.
Right. Yeah, and I heard a lot of other Notre Dame outlets has been, talking about it, but I don't know how true it is personally. A lot of stuff could be fake, of course, and that's what I was saying. Anybody would just post anything, random stuff out there. But yeah, honestly, I'm very interested to see like who's going to be their next head coach. Honestly, agree about. I mean, who do you really think is going to get the job there? Man,
Well, I don't know. I can take a guess if that's what you're looking for. I think that Dan Lanning, Mike Norvell, and Dabo Sweeney are the most likely candidates.
Like which one would you take out of those two?
My pecking order of coaches, if I could have anybody in the country, would be Kirby Smart, Mike Norvell, Dabo Sweeney, Dan Lanning, if we were considering coaches that I think are under consideration. I guess I would throw Jim Harbaugh in there if I could have anybody. But out of the guys that are likely candidates, that's how I would order them.
Yeah, because I was actually thinking about like Urban Meyer, but like you were saying, he may not even come back to coaching. But is it possible that he could coach again? I mean, because I think that would be really. I was thinking that he could come back and coach.
Well, I have little doubt that Urban Meyer would like to coach again. His coaching career ended at the age of, I don't know, like 55, something like that. So he was a relatively young man for his coaching career to end. However, if his health is, and not necessarily his current health, but what possibly triggers his health issues has to do with that type of situation, then that's probably why he's not coming back to coaching.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Obviously, Nick Saban is the greatest of all time. I was actually kind of predicted that he would retire sometime. I didn't know though when. But yeah, what do you make? I know that the Notre Dame thing that I was just talking about, I know everybody's just probably making that up, but like you haven't seen like absolutely anything like at any other outlets? Because I seen somebody showed me like that he's supposedly a candidate.
I've been sitting here ever since this news was announced. So I've been doing nothing but talking to all of you. So the people in the chat probably, excuse me, probably have more access to information of what's being talked about out there than I do.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just a little nervous, but it's probably not true. And even if it was, I truly don't believe that Marcus Freeman, like he's kind of an inexperienced head coach, anyways.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. I don't think that Marcus Freeman has yet proven what he can do with a program and that he can raise it. He's basically producing Brian Kelly results thus far. And that's not a bad
Right.
thing. It's just that's what he's producing thus far. So he hasn't really shown what he can do with the program. And Dan Lanning, to a certain extent, is in the same boat at Oregon, although he's elevated Oregon slightly over what Mario Cristobal did there.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
If Marcus Freeman was named the head coach at Alabama tomorrow, I would not be shocked, but I don't think that's the direction they're going.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, because again, yeah, Marcus Freeman just hasn't proved anything yet. Maybe in the future, like years and years down the line, if he proves himself, but I just don't think that they'll go that direction personally.
All right, Golden Playbook. Well, we appreciate you being here.
Alrighty, thank you.
All right, have a good night. All right, folks. I am going to take these last, I keep saying 3 calls and people keep calling. So we will take the final 3 calls. I've been sitting here for 5 hours, so I do appreciate everyone being here. And when I make that statement, I'm not complaining, or maybe just a little bit, because I appreciate that people have the interest that we're here talking with all of you. So I could be talking to no one right now. So I thank you for being here. But we had a Florida State show, we had a Miami show, and then we had this show. And so I've been sitting here since 6 p.m. All right, so we're going to get through these calls. We're going to try Nick one more time. Nick, how you doing?
Hey, can you hear me?
There we go. We got Nick this time.
Sweet. I don't understand Mark Freeman for the Alabama job. Could you explain that to me?
Did you hear the last call?
I heard the end of it, so that's why
Okay.
I'm asking it.
All right. So from my estimation, I can understand why Marcus Freeman would be an interesting or intriguing candidate because he's young, he's charismatic, he has handled a really good program for 2 years. Everyone speaks extremely highly of him, including players. He's just got the it factor. So that's what's on the plus side, and his youth is on the plus side. What's on the negative side is that he took over a program that wasn't broken, wasn't needing of being fixed, was just Brian Kelly top 10 to 15 good, and he's just basically done the same thing that Brian Kelly did. So he's not proven anything.
Okay, so he has the it factor, but he hasn't proven anything.
I mean an it factor from the standpoint of relating to people, building relationships, that kind of it factor, a personality, charismatic type it factor.
So his reputation must be outstanding. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense. I didn't really understand that. I don't follow Notre Dame, so I don't know what his reputation is. But
Well, think about it this way, Nick. He's proven a lot more at this point than he had 2 years ago. What had he done to gain the Notre Dame job?
being one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, especially at his age.
Well, from a historic standpoint, he's getting a job at Alabama that's pretty much on par with Notre Dame.
Yeah, but your coach who just retired got hired at Alabama, who had a national title.
Sure.
So I guess in my mind, I understand what you're saying, but in my mind, I just think it's kind of difficult to sell him as. But Alabama has resources, and they're gonna recruit well. So what do I know? I don't know. It just doesn't. It's difficult for me to make that connection. But what is your feeling? Because I actually agree with you. You made a comment earlier that about Kirby Smart. I don't think it's Kirby Smart, but don't you think Alabama would be foolish not to at least give him a call?
Yes, I totally agree with you. They should make that call. He's
And
the best in the business right now.
People saying oh, he won't leave because it's his alma mater. In normal well, I guess it's poorly defined, normal circumstances, but I still just can't get out of the back of my mind, yeah, it's his alma mater, but I know they've won 2 championships, so that definitely elevates the prestige of that university, but they still had gone so long without winning championships, and I just have to believe that Alabama is. I don't want to be disrespectful, but I think Alabama's a far superior job. I wouldn't be shocked if Kirby Smart was the next Alabama coach, and I don't think anyone else should be. Do you, or is that, or am I off there?
No, I would not be surprised. If Kirby Smart takes this job, and if he's offered the job, takes the job, then he's taken it for a few different reasons. Number one, he's accomplished everything that he can at Georgia. He is the greatest coach in the history of the program in a very short time. Number two, he is moving to your point, a more historic program that is arguably the greatest program of all time. So to be able to show that he can do it there as well, he's really looking at his legacy. And then maybe, he can't do any better at Georgia. He's already accomplished so much there that he can only maintain it, or more likely regress a little bit. So maybe he wants a new challenge, a new group of people to work with, new surroundings, a new vibe, a new environment. People get stale, and I'm not saying he's grown stale. He's only been there for going on 8 years, but people do grow stale in the same surroundings, working with the same people, looking at the same buildings every day. And he may just want a different challenge, a new challenge, and to take on what he probably considers to be the most historic and greatest program of all time.
Yeah. So with that said, I'm sure people have asked you before, who do you think is going to be the next head coach at Alabama? If you were to bet.
I don't know. I never feel confident making these kind of predictions. For as confident as I am and enjoy making game predictions, making coaching predictions is not my thing.
Okay.
Maybe I should start keeping my record. But I'm in the chair for a reason here. So,
well, can I just add something?
Sure.
Real quick. Don't you think it's difficult for Alabama to sell to their base a new head coach who is going to be leading the program, obviously, but who hasn't won a national title? I'm not saying they won't hire Dan Lanning or some of these other guys, but I just think at this point, that's really difficult to sell to their base. But at the same time, I don't think that's unfair for their base. The last guy you hired had won a title and then also won a bunch more didn't he win 6 titles in 12 years?
Well, he's won 6 in 17 total.
Oh,
And
okay. Okay.
yeah, and he didn't win one his first 2 years, nor his last 3. So that's 6 in 12 years. Yep.
But I just, again, I could be off on this, and I'm not saying they won't. I just think it's really difficult to justify that your base would react well to hiring a coach who's never won a title.
Okay. So I'm going to nitpick a little bit, but I understand the spirit of your point is this is Alabama and he won 6 national championships, because then I could go to a lot of other destinations where coaches won a national championship and their successor had not won a national championship. Jimbo Fisher was replaced at Florida State, not by a national championship winning coach. Urban Meyer was replaced at Ohio State, not by a national championship winning coach. Bob Stoops was replaced at Oklahoma, not by a guy who won a national championship, nor Pete Carroll at USC, nor Mac Brown at Texas.
Yeah, that's why I'm not going to push back on it too much, because I don't know, my gut feeling is that they're not going to hire a guy who's won a national championship before, because I mean, let's be honest, that's rare in and of itself. It's hard to do.
Yeah,
So,
if Kirby turns them down, then they've got Dabo, and they're not hiring Mac Brown just because he won a national championship. He's not.
no, yeah.
No, he's done. Sorry, Mac. Try to win at North Carolina.
Man,
Try to.
the Jim Harbaugh lover and the Mac Brown hater, Mark Rogers, said it himself. No, I'm kidding, obviously.
They could go after your guy.
Okay. First of all,
Yep.
I just want to say I was texting with my friend about this because he somehow has subscriptions to like ESPN. Like he gets all this news like right when it happens.
Yep.
And he sent me a text about Nick Saban. The first thing I thought of was Jim Harbaugh is quirky enough to just not even entertain it. Like not saying that I'm right, but just knowing him, he's in a different. I don't know. First of all, I think the fit would be terrible. Just the fit itself would be terrible. Not saying it couldn't happen. I don't know, but I think it'd be shocking.
See, it's funny because.
Are you serious about that though?
Another caller brought up, were you listening? Another caller brought up Jim Harbaugh. And my gut reaction and my emotional reaction is just exactly like yours. It does not in any way seem like a fit. Well, Brian Kelly at LSU, as soon as I heard that, I thought Brian Kelly at LSU. So it doesn't seem like a cultural fit. But in fact, it is politically and from a social issue and value standpoint, a much better fit than Jim Harbaugh is at Michigan. He much more aligns with the people of Alabama, and I'm sure the institution, not that it's not liberal, but it's far less liberal than Michigan. So Jim Harbaugh, from a value standpoint, actually would fit in better there.
Yeah, that's not in my gut. That's not what I see happening.
But what I'm telling you is the truth.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing. I think Brian Kelly, I think it's a little bit more nuanced to like, Jim Harbaugh is the Brian Kelly to Notre Dame, from Notre Dame LSU, I don't think in my brain computes when you're talking about Michigan and Alabama, because Jim Harbaugh is like one of the most, I'd like to see you talk about that with Steve Dace and see his reaction to it.
Harbaugh to Alabama.
Yeah, but also the Brian Kelly comparison, because Jim Harbaugh is Bo Schembechler, one of his quarterbacks, one of the most decorated Michigan players. I just all I'm saying, I'm not saying you're crazy for that. I actually kind of thought about that too, because I was joking about it with my friend, and then
I didn't bring it up. Somebody else did.
Yeah, sorry, but just the suggestion of it, I was joking about it with my friend when he talked it, and then one of the texts I sent back to him was, "Oh no, I'm gonna stop joking about this because I don't want to jinx us." Because Jim Harbaugh is one of those guys who, if he's crazy enough to leave his situation and go to the NFL, which that's not crazy, I don't want to be disrespectful, but he's off the cuff. Like, I mean, hey, congratulations. If a mind reader can understand what he's thinking, you got to be the GOAT of all GOATs. I mean, Jim Harbaugh's mind. Understanding that, good luck. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but would it stun me if it happened? At this point, with what we've seen so far, no. Like, I can't say I'd be stunned by it. I just don't think it will happen. So I think the ties that Jim has at Michigan are let me put it this way, unique. Very, very unique. And especially with Michigan being willing to match. Let me know if I'm wasting my time with this whole Jim Harbaugh thing. I guess I'll just
keep going. We just need to get moving here. But yeah, certainly speak your mind.
Yeah, no, I just Michigan's willing to match any dollar offer. So that's all I was going to say about it. But anyway, lastly, I wanted to say with this national title that Michigan won, I never thought I'd see it. I'm still in shock. It hasn't fully sunk in. Eventually, I won't ask you to do it now because you have other callers, but it'd be interesting for you to maybe do video like recapping Ohio State's. It's just hilarious, right? That Ohio State won the first CFP and Michigan wins the last. It still hasn't sunk in for me fully as a Michigan fan. So I don't know. I just think it'd be kind of cool because you were the first one to experience it in that light for you to maybe recap that in some content form someday.
Well, I appreciate the request. I'm still not quite understanding. What am I recapping? The entire college football playoff for 10 years or comparing Ohio State and Michigan's championships?
No, just your personal experience.
I got you.
Yeah, from winning the first one ever from an Ohio State fan perspective.
I got you. Okay.
But
Very
anyway,
cool.
I appreciate it, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too.
All right. Moose, thank you so much. This is so kind of you individuals that do this. So Moose has gifted 5 Voice of College Football memberships. So we got a YouTube membership right here on the main channel. And you get my predictions, which come in handy right now, considering that the next one's coming in like 8 months. So we know that. But we've got a lot of other things going on there. The Voice of College Football, your Discord link with the conversation there, and other things that I won't go into right now. But that's very kind of Moose. Just appreciate Moose. So when I've got, it just astounds me, your class and your loyalty and all these other characteristics that you guys have as Michigan fans to support us here at the Voice of College Football. I appreciate that so much. So I don't know how that works. I just know that he gifts that and then something randomly happens and that spits out 5 memberships for 5 people in some fashion. I don't know how that works. And Moose has done it again here. Gifting 5 YouTube memberships. So hopefully those will come through and we will see who our new members are here at the Voice of College Football. Moose, thank you so much for that.
Defense.
All right.
Wow, yeah.
David Greenshield's here.
Shout out to the largest fan base. You got to make them happy, Mark. I can see that, you know.
I don't need to do anything to make them happy these days.
Well, hey, yeah, absolutely. Walmart Wolverine fans are out in full force, you know. They crawled out from under their rock. 3 years ago, they were nowhere probably to be found. I guarantee you 3 years ago, they were not your largest fan base. I would bet a large lump sum of money that that's the fact, but that's neither here nor there. but factually accurate statements.
Yes,
Hey, it's
maybe my Ohio State viewership going down has
yeah.
coincided with that.
Hey, I'm still here and I'm in the paint. Hey, it's happy to see that they bought the Stallions some beer, by the way. I wonder if they bought their disgraced other coaches that they fired some beer too, like Partridge in a Pear Tree and that other guy that was caught at the Walmart trying to buy liquor, for underage people. I wonder if they bought them some beers too, that
Who was
crowd.
that guy at the Walmart?
Well, let's put it this way, Mark. He wasn't up to anything good at the Walmart. I'll tell you that much.
Well, I know that.
I don't think he was there to buy tube socks. Let's put it that way, my friend. I don't think he was there to buy bath towels.
He was back in the back by the
but
electronics. Maybe he was shopping a 75-inch
yeah,
TV.
yeah, I'm sure he was there for a DVD player, Mark.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh man, you gotta love the Walmart crowd. Yeah, I was gonna listen to the Days podcast, but I had already ate and didn't want to vomit. But that's neither
It's
here
always
nor
worth
there.
a listen.
It was good to be that you were his emotional support. Well, hey, I was just happy you were his emotional support animal for all those years, Mark. That he wanted his coach fired, and he had
I was
lists
that.
of coaches that he wanted that he wanted to replace Harbaugh with. It was great that you were there for him, that you were his shoulder to cry on, which I think was very, very helpful for him, because he was about ready to go off the ledge there for a while.
I should remind him of that.
Yeah, you should have charged him some bucks for that,
I should have. I should also scour this channel for comments that were made about Jim Harbaugh 3 years ago.
Probably wasn't great. And by the way, let me ask you, Mark, did COVID save his job or did his last name save his job or both?
Oh, I think both. Yes.
Yeah.
When you threw out COVID, I was going to say something about his name. But I think both enter into the picture. Absolutely.
Yeah, if he was Jim Smith, I don't know if he keeps his job after the COVID year.
Now, Dace said the other day,
Yeah,
when we recorded that he said that Michigan cowering in 2020 and refusing to play Ohio State, which he fully admits happened, was the best thing that they could have done rather than going out there and getting slaughtered.
It was. It was to this day. I mean, if COVID never happens, and by the way, to Dace's credit, he went out against the Big Ten and did call them out. We had a big discussion about the time with the way they handled the whole scheduling and the way that Warren and the presidents handled it like a hand grenade compared to the way the Big 12 handled it and then the SEC handled it. The SEC would rather, I mean, if you want to see how conferences diametrically opposed to each other handled college football, totally different, go back and watch 2020. It's night and day.
That told me, and I've said this many times, that whole situation told me basically two things about these conferences. Number one, that they own the sport because they all did whatever they wanted to do. No NCAA was telling any of these conference commissioners what they were going to do. They did whatever they wanted to do. So those 5 conferences and now 4 do whatever they want. Number two, you saw the value put into the football, put into the politics, the social, however you want to phrase the rest of it.
Right.
You saw that the SEC was basically saying, we're taking this seriously, but we're going to play football. Now we've stated we are playing football. Now we just have to figure out all the safeguards that we have to go through to make that happen. Everybody else was more like, well, we're going to figure out how to best navigate this, but the SEC was like, no, we're playing football.
Right.
And then the Big 12 and the ACC quickly kind of followed suit once the SEC was full throttle.
Yeah.
And the Pac-12 was completely on the other end of the spectrum.
Oh yeah.
They were cowering in the corner, and the Big Ten to me was the most interesting because it was conflicted internally.
Right.
The administrators and the suits were all shutting down mode, and the players, the coaches, the fans, the working class were all, no, we're playing football.
Well, who were the two schools that really wanted to play that year, Mark?
Ohio State,
Nebraska and Ohio.
Nebraska. Yeah.
Exactly. Those rest of the programs wanted no part of college football. Believe you me, the Walmart fans weren't interested in college football that year either. So, they were already putting up graphs and charts for new coaches, but that's neither here nor there. They're living their best life now, so we move on. Let's talk about the greatest coach in the history of the college football, and I don't mind saying that. He's set the standard. I just want to say, as a man that's really had negative feelings about this man since 1998, as an Ohio State fan, when he took an average team with Jim Burke into Ohio State and beat us when we were clearly the best team in the country that year. I've always had a disdain for Mr. Saban, but what he did at Alabama it's unbelievable. It's unprecedented in the history of the sport. And what he did is he did the two things. He mastered the two biggest things in the history of the sport that have to be mastered by a college coach. That's recruit and build the coaching staff. Nobody ever put together both greater than he did. Is there a better way to put it than that, Mark?
Part of me sitting here for 5.5 hours is very agreeable at this point, but certainly you have nailed it. Yes.
To me, they're the two biggest things that a college football can do, a coach can do. Now they're the two biggest things a college football coach could do maybe in the previous era of college football. But now that we don't have college football anymore, we're pretty much semi-pro football right now. Or are we minor league NFL right now? Maybe you have to rename that. I always say maybe you should change the name of the show, Mark, because of NIL and the transfer portal and the way it's changed the sport. But I'm just saying the not so quiet part out loud. But now that we have free agency and now that we're compensating them, is it truly college anymore? Because the line is no longer blurred. And I just wonder how much that went into his decision today.
If you listen to what he has to say, I think it had a large part in his decision. I don't think he likes where the sport's headed and doesn't want to be involved in it.
I tend to agree. I think that the one thing about it is that to a lot of people, though, and this is kind of where maybe the NFL went, maybe in the 90s, Mark, with free agency, to a certain extent. Could a comparison be made there?
Well, when you say where the NFL went, but the NFL is a professional league, so there's no compromise in terms of integrity values and what you're supposed to be.
Well, like I said, Mark, I think we've already jumped the shark here.
Yeah, we have. So what are you talking about with NFL? Just that there was NFL free agency for the first time.
Right, exactly. The fact that we now have the portal, that we now have compensation is basically, to a lot of people, that's what's happening to the field right now. It's more, people would say that it's having a way to kind of maybe even up the field a little bit more.
But I'm much more comfortable with NFL free agency, and it's much more digestible and because of there's a business to be run, therefore everyone can agree on the rules and they can make rules because they're running a business, and therefore they can say, while there's free agency, not everybody in the NFL is a free agent and can just run hither and all over the place and do whatever they want. No, a team can protect this many players and they've got them under contract, and therefore there's a limited amount. And so fans can at least recognize their team the next year and know, okay, we only need to really be concerned with this many players possibly leaving. And it's almost a good balance, because if it was the old days in this 24/7 news cycle, it would be too boring to go back to the 1950s, just where there was very little player movement only because of the draft, because that wouldn't create enough excitement for people to follow. But if it was too crazy, if everybody could be a free agent, then I don't think fans would want that. They want some stability, but they want a little bit of excitement that we may go out and get a new left tackle and a new cornerback. So there's a little bit of that in the NFL. And so once again, the NFL, again, does it right and does it the most popular way because they do almost everything perfectly.
Well, I don't. We can disagree on that. But that's a different discussion for a different day. I would say, just because I made the comparison, I remember back in the early '90s, I think it was John Madden that had said that he had thought free agency would ruin the NFL. I believe he had issued that statement at the time because a lot of, when it happened, Mark, is a lot of people had said that that would eliminate the dynasty aspect. Now, obviously, you did have the Patriots run, in the free agency era, but the thing about it is you saw the competitive balance in the NFL there for a long period of time, where teams were going from being awful to a few years later they could contend. I mean, that's kind of the argument that I'm making here, is drawing this comparison with what's going on in college football, is maybe this has evened up things, whereas the gap isn't maybe as great as it was a few years ago in a pre-NIL, pre-portal world.
Well, I don't think anything we've seen on the field has led us in that direction. We're going to have to see 3 to 5 years from now to see if that truly plays out. And we're not going to be able to make an accurate evaluation of it completely because we've also got a 12-team playoff starting at roughly
Right.
the same time. And that should cause other schools to have a better chance at better talent.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how those early games go. Are there any real upsets? Are there teams that are lower seeded that can make a run in that playoff? So on and so forth. So that you're right, but you've got to get a decent sample size to see, if that's playing out that way. I would say. The other comment I wanted to make about Saban too, Mark, that I think that also is a testimony to his greatness, and we can talk about it. Obviously, he's retiring. And then I wanted to kind of give you a couple ideas on candidates who I thought might take the job too. Um, I think the one thing about him, and this is true for any coach that is successful for a long period of time, is how he was able to win with his early championship teams, which were more built around defense and the running game, and then those game manager quarterbacks. And then how he was able to win with his later teams, which was more of a wide open offense, receiver, when he had that great run of receivers and quarterback play and all of that. I was very impressed how he was able to kind of adapt that way. I don't know what your thoughts were on that, Mark.
Absolutely. He was able to adapt. He saw that the game was changing. He didn't like it, but he adapted. Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting that, Mark, I don't know if you've had this discussion, but we'll throw it out there. But maybe are we seeing a sway in college football now to where the offenses had their run? Are we seeing to a point to where maybe the defenses are having their run right now?
I think that that's been a trend in football, also in the NFL, that every time that they've made rules changes to favor the offense, that the defense took a step back and then caught up, and then they kept giving the offense more and more leeway.
Yeah, I mean, just an interesting thought, because we had that run of kind of offensive teams that won it, there for a period of time. As far as candidates, I just want to throw out a few names before I let you go, Mark. But the one obvious name that was always put out there, it seems like, was Dabo. Hadn't you always heard that kind of put out there for a period of
Sure.
time that once Saban steps down, that Dabo would be number one? What are your thoughts on that? And number two, do you think that the last few years might have soured some folks on Dabo?
Absolutely. People want to win. And when they see that, when they put 2 and 2 together, meaning the landscape of college football has changed and Dabo Swinney's no longer winning at the rate that he was a couple years ago, then it's obvious to make a connection there to say, well, is he ever going to win again at that rate? And then number two, he's not using the transfer portal, and that has to be used. I would feel pretty confident in hiring Dabo Swinney as the next coach at Alabama as long as he was willing to use the transfer portal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he was still a coach that benefited from a period of time between two things that most people have talked about. Number one, the weakness of the ACC, and number two, he had two of the more generational college quarterbacks of all time.
Yep.
And I think that he hit that kind of period of time there. The coach I would put out there, this is the second coach I want to put out there, Mark. And I wonder how big you are on him. I hear a lot of people, and his name was mentioned earlier, and I wonder how long he's going to be at this job, especially with this program entering the Big Ten. And that's Dan Lanning, Mark. Are you a Lanning fan? And
Yeah, we've talked a ton about Dan Lanning tonight, and
okay.
basically, I would not hire him if I was Alabama. Not that he's not a good coach, not that he's not going to be a better coach, but he's not sold me completely because he took over a program that is basically competing at the same level that he's competing at. So he's generally lifted the program. I think there's a more optimistic look at the program because he's a better in-game coach and a preparation guy from a schematic standpoint than Mario Cristobal, but they've not done anything that Mario Cristobal didn't do.
I mean, they were one play away from the playoff this year, Mark. I mean, and he
So
does
was
seem
Mario Cristobal,
yeah.
in a sense. So yeah, he's won slightly more. Mario Cristobal won a Rose Bowl and lost 2 games there as well. And yeah,
He knows the SEC too, Mark,
like
though.
I say, they're a little bit better. Yeah, I'm
does know
not saying it's a bad hire. I'm not saying,
Okay.
I'm just saying he would not be my number one choice.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be Kirby. By the way, Kirby might be on his way to a run here, considering that a major obstacle just got out of his way,
Yep.
and he's already, in my view, at one of the top 5 jobs in the country, and he's got the state of Georgia to recruit.
Yep.
So, all right, my friend, I can
Thank
see
you,
you've been
David.
on here for a while. You have yourself
Yeah.
a good one, my friend.
I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Take care now.
Let's take our last call of the night, and we want to give some time to
Hey, man.
Bama Duck.
There you go. I realize you've been on there for a while, and I certainly do appreciate you. I don't for a minute think that Harbaugh is. I don't think after beating Bama 27-20 in overtime, I damn sure don't think that the alumni at Alabama is going to welcome him with open arms. Now, Kirby Smart, I'm going to have to push him under the rug. But I do believe Dabo, in my heart, now I may be wrong. I'm not up to date, but now that you got a 12-team playoff coming up next year and you got Oklahoma and Texas, you got so many options, man, but I just don't see nobody right at the moment. In my opinion, is Dabo right now is, and Marcus Freeman. No, they're not going to go that route, and I don't see them going to Harbaugh. You may disagree. I mean, we all entitled to that, but my thing is, I kind of like Dabo myself because he played at Alabama, and Kirby Smart, like you say, he's got his foot deep in Georgia, and I just don't. Now is his chance to shine. If you know what I'm saying, I mean he's there. This is his time to shine.
Yeah. So, sir, your first point about Harbaugh was that he just beat Alabama in overtime, and Alabama faithful would not be too high on him being the coach. Well, Dabo's beaten Alabama in championship games.
Sure.
Kirby's beaten Alabama in a championship game. What's the difference?
He's because he's played for Alabama.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I know that don't. I'm Alabama. I mean, I live in Alabama. I mean, I'm just, I would prefer to have Dabo as opposed to hell. I don't know that Harbaugh. How would he even feel to come down to Mason-Dixon and coach at Alabama, being that I don't even know where he's from. Do you? Birthmark.
He was born somewhere close to Chicago, I think.
Okay.
No. He was close to Toledo. Anyway, up north. He's always lived in the north.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. But my thing is
Brian Kelly.
I don't know why. And furthermore, I mean, Haley's a good coach. I ain't taking that. Well, everybody knows that. He comes from Schnellenberger, so I mean, he's under his wings basically, but I don't know if right at this. I was shocked when I got the news about 3 or 4 hours ago. I mean, I had no way of knowing. I've met Nick Saban several times. I mean, I live in Montgomery, and I mean, hell, I mean, it's just it just caught us completely by surprise. And my thing is, you've been in sports for a long time. I just hope that we can maintain our team, keep Milrow, and we can keep our running backs. I mean, you know, you got the portal now, so I don't know. It depends on who's coming in and who's going out. I'd like for us to keep our team intact, but hell, you know yourself, it's going to be hard to do that.
Well, that's hard for everyone. That's the challenge that everybody's facing is high school recruiting and how many of those players are still going to be on our roster in 2 or 3 years. And so while they're out there scouting the nation and trying to figure out who to pick up in the transfer portal, they've got to recruit their own locker room and keep those guys from leaving. But also understand that the part of this that doesn't get brought up very often is that some of the players that leave are kind of nudged out. So it's not all the players just saying, I need to get out of here. A lot of it's after the season or after we'll see another transfer portal window after spring practice. Those coaches are going to have conversations with players and kind of set the stage and say, this is where you stand on the depth chart. You may want to look somewhere else.
You know, I mean, now that this portal's done kicked in, I mean, and I don't blame these players. I mean, hell, if they don't get a chance to get out there and prove themselves and do what they need to do, I'm all for that. But what's happening right now with me with Bama is I don't know how many times I've been to Bryant Denny. I mean, I'm just I'm kind of hoping that we can. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking about what the hell is what's these players thinking right now? What's going through their mind? I know Saban's he's done retired. Okay, we're still there's aftershock like an earthquake, but what's the players' mentality that you think? What do they got to come through? I mean, they got 240 days to get over to the next game. So,
well, I think that players make decisions to go to school for a ton of different reasons. They all have different priorities, but I think most of them are thinking, hey, either I'm out of here or I got to see who they're going to hire. And if I'm okay with the hire, then I'm staying. But if I'm not, then this is not what I signed up for. I signed up for Nick Saban.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
they're going to lose a lot of players.
You think? I mean, see, I was hoping you wouldn't say that.
Well, why not? I'm not talking about 30 players. I'm talking about.
Yeah, I didn't want to lose one because we were at a building stage. We came at the beginning of the season. We lost to Texas, a damn good program, and then we came around. I mean, we scraped through and we scratched and clawed our way to win. That's what the point of competition is. But damn it, man, you get to that point, you build your season, you beat Georgia in Atlanta, which I consider their home stadium. Okay, so we overcome that. And it took all Michigan to do to beat us in overtime, and then they blew the hell out of Washington. But what I'm thinking, and what the hell, Nick? I mean, I know you, like you said earlier, he accomplished what he wanted to set out and do. He did. But, man, right at the moment, we really want you to stay. But like you say, the man's 72 years of age, and he's had a hell of a career. I mean, you take Mike Shula, Don Shula, rather, I'm sorry, at the Dolphins. I mean, he won so many games with the Dolphins, he just said, there's nothing more for me to do.
Yep.
And I got a nephew that really enjoys your program.
Hey, I'm the one that asked for the StreamYard link. I appreciate you bringing us on.
Nice work there. Appreciate that. You sometimes have to work through the technology for us old guys.
Sure. No, and I commend you for being on this long. I couldn't imagine, because We just got done with an hour and a half live, but I wanted to say this. We're in Alabama, and just like he just said, it is straight denial in Alabama right now.
I bet.
Nobody is wanting to believe it. It is denial.
Me.
I bet. I
still-
lived about 15 or 20 minutes from the state line in Mississippi for 7 years.
All right. Come on.
And I covered Alabama football in Mississippi State and Ole Miss in the mid to late 90s. So yeah, I can imagine. He's the greatest of all time. Alabama loves its football more than anybody else, or at least as much as anybody else.
Right.
So I can imagine this is just sending
it's like
shockwaves.
it is.
Yeah.
Hey, I do have one person that I would like to recommend. That'd be Eli Gold.
Yeah, right.
Now, Eli, the voice of Alabama.
Hey,
Yep.
I know, hell, I know he ain't gonna come, but I'm saying that's how much we love Eli, and then we'd take him. Of course, if Donald Trump needs a job, we'll take him.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark, for having us.
Hey,
Thank
you've been a
you.
blessing. Hey,
We
you've been a
appreciate
blessing.
it. Thank you so much. God bless you.
God bless you, my friend.
All right. It was great to hear from Bama Duck there. That's awesome. Thank you so much for wrapping up the show for us, Bama Duck. We got to hear from a Bama fan on the night that we were saying goodbye to Nick Saban. It's impossible to overstate what he accomplished in this sport. I will do my best in the coming days. I don't think I have the wherewithal right this second. We've been on here since 6 p.m. I'm sorry. It's not been quite 6 hours, but I will try to put into words what he has accomplished in this sport. The numbers are there to see. It's amazing. Just the consistency of the excellence is astonishing. And when I made the statement, as I have a number of times this month and throughout the season, that this is probably the worst Alabama team since 2007. Even the 08 team came that close to going to the national championship game and beating Florida in the SEC title game. That's a compliment that I thought Alabama had a great shot to win the national championship this year. And I fully believe had they gotten by Michigan, they would have beaten Washington. They would have been able to, that would have been another hammer to nail kind of deal. They would have just pounded Washington into submission in the trenches and won the national championship. That's just astounding to say. That's remarkable in and of itself. This guy took maybe his worst team in 15 years and still came that close to winning a national championship. It's astounding. Appreciate everyone being here at the Voice of College Football. If there is an announcement tomorrow on the new Alabama head coach, guess where we'll be? Right here. I may turn my pillow over. I may do that. Tomorrow, but we'll be here, and we appreciate all your support here at the Voice of College Football. Please subscribe on your way out if you're not subscribed. And I know from the analytics that about 65% of you that watch the videos and the live streams are not subscribed. So it doesn't cost you anything. Please subscribe. Moose, thank you so much for offering those YouTube memberships to those fine folks as well. Also, keep in mind that if you entered the Voice of College Football Bowl Challenge, that we have promo codes for merch for $100, $75, and $25 to the first 3 finishers. So go to the community page, and I've let everyone know, hey, if you won or you were second place or third place, you get Voice of College Football merch. So please take advantage of that. And we will see you sometime tomorrow for sure. Check out the ACC conference ranking that I just posted here a couple hours ago here at the Voice of College Football. We will see you on Thursday.